Welcome to episode 105 with Chris Crusade for Podcast with Nick and Blaze. I am Blaze, your host, and in this one, another round has been and gone. Round 9, to be specific, Scott Pendlebury has officially equaled the all-time games record with Boomer Harvey. We saw some really, really close games very early in the weekend, but especially ones between Freo and Hawthorn, Port Adelaide and the Bulldogs. They're the two big ones to talk about. And we're just getting set for the approaching Sir Doug Nicholls rounds in rounds 10 and 11. But without further ado, let's jump straight into it. How are you doing, Mr. Sarek?
Yeah, not too bad, not too bad. Another week, and I don't know what I did. I did something on the weekend. Or maybe I didn't. Anyway, it was Mother's Day.
Yes.
That's right.
Yes, it was.
It was a very relaxed Mother's Day for me. I try to look after my mum and all that sort of stuff, but she was very chilled. So she just wanted a few DVDs, which I've got on the way from JB Hi-Fi. It's gonna go down there, but I was like, oh no, it's too far away to go. So I was like, I guess I'll just sort of. I feel bad, but like at the same time, it's like, yeah, she wasn't gonna because it's free movies and she's got plenty of movies. So I'm like,
Yes.
I guess it makes sense. But try to look after it. She was just coming off from sickness, so it gave me a bit chance to, make sure she had enough teas in her, clean the house, all that sort of thing. Make sure all the other stuff is all well and good. Cook a dinner. I didn't cook dinner. We got fish and chips, but only because there was like nothing in the house.
Fish and chips is pretty good.
Yeah, I always like it. I think it's her favorite takeout, probably.
Fair enough.
Yeah. So, yeah, pretty sure.
As you can see behind me, sorry I can't because you can't see me technically, but my big ball unit is no longer there. It is in pieces behind me. The move is fast approaching. Saturday is when everything goes over. I'm very excited for that. Otherwise, my Mother's Day weekend wasn't too bad. I had work. I went out for dinner with my parents for Mother's Day on the Saturday night. I had a steak. It was very delicious. And then on Sunday, we went to the footy, of course, Richmond and Adelaide. Great first half, very poor second half. We'll talk about that during the game itself. But yeah, it was really nice. I got Mum some new moccasins, and I got her some flowers as well. It was all very lovely. But yeah, it was otherwise just more packing. I dismantled my bed frame. Dad helped me dismantle my bed frame, so we can get that ready for the move. So I'm now currently basically sleeping on the floor, for the next week and a bit, which is fine. I still have to kind of pack up like my consoles and stuff that are over here. But and then like just other smaller stuff in like my bathroom and my kitchen. But otherwise, I'm pretty much ready to go. Less than a week, and then I'm in my new place.
Yeah, it will be a shame to see it go. I guess I was only ever in there like twice. Wow, twice for an extended period. I guess like this couch isn't going anywhere. So
no, the couch is coming with me, and I'm getting a new couch as well. So I'll have two couches. You can pick and choose if we crash the
if I ever stay back
year.
up there. I've already got a Boto book, so.
Oh yeah, fair enough. Fair enough. All right, shall we?
Go down.
Yes. All right, shall we jump into our Thursday night clash between Freo and Hawthorn?
Yes, because this is a doozy. Because a big Optus game with big ladder implications, top 4 clash. It was one to get us excited.
Absolutely. So with a 15-point margin over at Optus Stadium, Freo did win out after a really, really intense fourth quarter, 12-16, 88 to 11-7, 73.
Yes, and the start of the game, though, was sort of mired by an initial defensive collapse. I saw Jack Gunston kick 5-goal-3 up until halftime, and Nick Watson 3-zip, and it looked like the occasion might have gotten a bit too big for Freo. Blaze, I should point out, famously absolutely slammed Freo. I think it was at halftime or
no, it was
point of the game.
So when I woke up to get ready for work, I had seen Jack Gunston just kick his 6th goal at the start of the fourth quarter. And then I think Hawthorn was 15, 16, 17 points up, something like that. And that's when
Yeah.
I was like, no, that's it. Freo can't win it from here. It's over. The good graces of the run have is just dissipated. And then I get to work
Yeah.
and I check back in the scores, and Freo kick like 4 straight and win the game. So I'm like,
Yeah. Well, yeah. I found it strange because we forgot about that, but yeah, because it took a while to get that goal, so I can see it was like 11 in, but Hawthorn had really dried up. It was their first goal in about a quarter. I actually like what Freo were doing; they just weren't converting.
mm-hmm.
But sure enough, the floodgates absolutely open. We got a Josh Tracy goal, Michael Frederick goal, Joe Amos goal, Michael Frederick, and then Hayden Young to bring it all home. Gets Freo the win. And you know what? I reckon this was a bit of a grind out because I think I write this later, but yeah, as I said, Freo would just sort of wore out the Hawks with their famous, I guess, quote unquote, slow back half ball movement, just finding looser and looser holes as the night wore on,
Mm-hmm.
refusing to shift to the refusing to shift the ball faster. Players like Frederick and Clark more just add finishing touches to the good midfield dominance of young Sarong. Always
Wrong.
changes it. Sarong. And Luke Jackson and Amos made up for Tracy's good but touch inaccurate night. Sorry, I think Luke Jackson was sort of the midfield group, and Amos was just the one sort of converting for the night. Um, so yeah, it was very much a contest where Hawthorn, they were really good for the first half, and as I said, it was a bit weird because I didn't watch this like intensely the first half. I was on stream, but I got my dad to give me a rundown, and he was just like, "Yeah, for some reason Freya's defense just looked a bit scattered. They can do that occasions. I mean, we saw that in the last half against Geelong.
Mm-hmm.
Bits of the game against Carlton,
Mm-hmm.
I think it was. Was that last week, or who were they
Uh,
facing?
it was either last week or like the week before, something like that. It was
Yeah.
very recent.
So, but when they do get their whole field pressure on, like it is very hard to beat. And I right here, like the commentators might hate it, and oh geez, it was painful listening to Gary Lyon. He was just saying, "Oh, Freo need to take the game on. They need to take it faster." When really, um, it was in their advantage to play slowly. And we'll talk about why when we talk about Hawthorn in a bit. But they had really good matchups in the middle.
Mm-hmm.
They had solid, key forwards to lean to. So, really, I think Freo just like can play that sort of tempo game because if they're behind, and we've seen this even last year, their big men don't get smaller, and they've improved their ability late to find them in late in games. It's not a fluke. And then obviously to sort of grease the wheels, Bolton Reid, both had more so Reid probably in this game had a fantastic game. But they're normally the two that sort of provide moments. Elsewhere in this game, Michael Frederick
Mm-hmm.
also was beautiful. He had one of the best games of his career, if not the best. They're the ones that can provide in a pinch. But Freo don't pretend to be something they're not. They're not forcing this creation. They just go with this very basic but solid game plan. And up against Hawthorn, like it was pretty set up to work, with a combination of good stoppage and back half defense. And, as I said, when we'll talk about Hawthorn in a bit and where they sort of score from, you can really do a lot when you shut down the centre half back play of Hawthorn. And that's really where it sort of happened in this game.
Yeah, from what I saw, like Freo were just able to shut down most of Hawthorn's attacking avenues. Like the fact that they play slow and methodical really plays into the fact that Hawthorn try to play chaos ball because they have such a weirdly mismatched forward line as they've had for like
Mm.
what past 2 seasons or so now. Like so that really plays into the Freo's favor of playing slow, playing tactic, like far more tactically. But when it came to that midfield battle, like I felt like Freo were like far and away the better side in terms of the one-on-one on the midfield. In terms of like however Freo's forward line to Hawthorn's defense, I think that probably played a little bit more into Hawthorn's favor just because of how stacked their defense is and how much of
Mm.
like a really solid um like workhorse of a backline that is. But
Yeah.
the fact that Freya's forwards were able to still create space and find avenues to score really goes to show how versatile they have become and how dangerous they've become.
It's a bit hard to tell because obviously the brass going down early was a bit of a shame. And it's a bit ironic that they dropped Jack Scrimshaw after not really being able to find him a good position, playing off the tolls. And all of a sudden they were clearly down a toll player. Josh Weddle sort of had to play a bit more accountable, but he doesn't really quite fit, that sort of defensive mold.
Yes.
Sicily was really good. And obviously Battle also had his moments. As I said, it's sort of hard because, Josh Tracy sort of kicks 2 goals for, and they sort of juggled around the Jai Amos matchup. So as good as we say it is, like they did technically give up that 6 shots to Tracy, I think 4 shots to Warner Voss because I think he missed one, and where's the other one? It was whatever Amos kick 3.
Oh, yeah,
so
right. Yeah.
It's still a lot. Obviously it's not quite as bad as giving Jack Gunston 8 shots. I think Ryan was on him, and then he sort of had to get shuffled off him because he just got beaten.
Yes.
So I think he just in this game there were some weird defensive matchups that didn't quite work for either team. But as you said, it's just that formation. Whereas as I said, it's late in the games. It's finding that moments because, as you said, for the most of the part, they got most of their rebounds. Or that most of their defense was solid. I don't think it was like a huge problem for the Hawks, except later on, and that was just due to their inability to move the ball late in the game.
Yeah, I think and the fact that like Freo just kind of wore them down, and it's like and their system just kind of couldn't cope with, like, you'd think that because Freo play a slow ball, like it would like have like the opposing teams would still have plenty of energy to kind of combat that, but it felt like they were just really drained a lot quicker.
As I said, that's the thing. Whereas Hawthorn, as you're saying, I don't quite call it chaos because they do hold it up when they need to. But, I think it's just the way with a Freo play where, again, they set up so back half. So they're almost, I'll say it's almost like not a decoy, but like a feigned invitation.
Oh, yeah.
Where they were sort of inviting Hawthorn to go deep. Be like, oh, you've got a bit of space, you can run the ball full. But they had like enough structure. Again, sans for the Gunston matchup, which is sort of blew them. But if you took that out of the match, like Hawthorn's defense was pretty held, and obviously when we saw in the back half, the avenues really dried up. And I guess I should mention here, I'm not sure if you can bring the graphic up, but another problem for Hawthorn is just like the lack of scoring options in stoppages. And I got like a little thing that I just got off Wheelo, Andrew Whelan's data, and I was sort of like sorting through centre bounce, and you see the Hawthorn players, Jai Newcomb, 81% of centre bounce, only score 4 involvements. Connor Nash, 1 score involvement. Ned Reeves, 0 score involvements, and they were the 3 players above 50% time in the middle of the ground. I think of their midfield unit, I think Lloyd Meek was the highest with about 6 or 7. So it's really low when you have like Andrew Brayshaw 7, Caleb Sarong 7, Luke Jackson 9, Shai Bolton 10, Hayden Young 8. While this is bad, like the real damage was the fact that they didn't get it off the back half either, because they shut that down. So, when you can contain players like Impey, when you can contain players like Amon, he had great games, so they just weren't like involved in scoring chains as well, because, there wasn't that link up later down the field. Hawthorn really had to rely on forward half interception and some good aggressive positioning to really get their game going. So when that dried up, it just didn't happen. And then Freo just had obvious advantage to scoring. And, it may have all happened quickly. But as I said, I had the feeling in that second half that Freo were a good chance to take that game away, even at the start of the fourth quarter, just by the way the game was being played. But, as I said, Hawthorn, they've got a few players missing. I don't think this is the worst loss for them.
No.
I think this is just Freo doing what needed to be done. And, as I said, Hawks, their bowl use numbers are great, but I really feel they're also skewed heavily to the back half players. And they're not the only team with that. We'll talk about another team where this is a problem. If their impact from first disposal isn't threatening, there's a fair chance their whole chain isn't. And I'm talking about like those back half launches. As I said, they're almost requiring players like Amon and Impey hit that really piercing long kick, maybe to like a Massimo D'Ambrosio, and all that sort of thing. Because I also had a look at their whole midfield unit, and they're actually one of the teams that only just like their best player is only involved in 21% of their scoring chains.
Oh, yeah.
Out of their midfield group, I should say, and that's Giannikum. And there's only one other team where that really happens. Like most of the highest are like, your 28s to 30s, which is actually Adelaide. But that's only if you discount Rochelle and Rankin, who I think are technically midfielders anyway. So, they're really the only team that doesn't score from their middle unit. It's very weird, but it's very apparent so far this season.
And especially when you compare the matchup to Freo, as you've just discussed. Like, the Freo I feel like have a lot more reliability in their CBA rotations, that no matter who they kind of put through that midfield, they are more likely than not able to get either a score involvement or some kind of goal assist or just any sort of key link up that puts the ball inside 50. And like you can see it very clearly with the fact that, Brayshaw, Sarong, Bolton all like rack up huge numbers. Luke Jackson, obviously, but that's because he's a rock. But those three core midfield players, and then you have Young rotating through there as well. Like the fact that those score involvements are so high, especially when up against these top 8 teams, goes to show that it's a core that works. It's a core that's gelled really well, and they have excellent link up to their tall forwards that create the score. Like that's how a reliable system should work, and it's how the Freo system works, almost to a perfect T.
Yeah, and as I said, like really the only concern was just how long it sort of took for them to get going. Because again, like they did leave their run a bit late. Like I'm not gonna lie.
No, you're not wrong about
like, it was definitely felt like they should have only just won this game, or they're very fortuitous. But as I said, you can see it coming. It was just as I said, their one goal to. It was pretty much even third quarter. Felt like it should have been more in Freo's favour. They just couldn't capitalise, except for a pretty good Amos mark and goal. I can't remember if that was the one he took that great contested mark, but as we've been saying, he's having a fantastic season now.
He is having a fantastic
honestly,
season. It's really good to see.
It is, as I said, Voss on the other hand still struggling, but at least I think for the long term, I think it's just good for the competition if Amos gets to close to his potential, because as I said, he is a fantastic set of hands and a pretty reliable shot.
Oh yeah, absolutely. On the injury side of things, as we have already mentioned, Tom Barrass went out with a hamstring injury, and then on the MRO side of things, Heath Chapman was fined $1,000 for misconduct against Nick Watson. Blake Hardwick was fined $1,000 also for instigating a melee.
I'm not actually sure what the melee was. I think it might have been when I was only half watching it, but as I said, big win for Freo. Obviously, when it comes to top 4 at the end of the year, these are sort of the ones that can be the difference between either playing top 4 or securing at least a home final for finals. And obviously, considering where they were last year, this is really good. And as I said, Hawthorn, I'd still think general season, they're still tracking. It's just going to be weird, come the end of the season, how much they sort of, change maybe some of their looks in their midfield unit. Because I think individually, some of these players, they're not bad. I just really think, again, we talk about Will Day all the time and the fact that he's missing and all that, but they have had a lot of the season and a lot of time played without him.
Mm.
I think it's up to them to sort of try and find players that can sort of fill that role. I think they've had a bit of mixed success with Cam McKenzie. Sometimes Connor McDonald gets into that midfield unit. But yeah, as I said, it's like, Connor Nash and Josh Ward tend to play a lot more assist, gritty and grindy sort of football. But they're not really those I'd say like boom decision makers,
Yeah.
most of the time it's Jai Newcomb. And even him, like compared to other superstars of the competition, isn't really that lethal. I still think it's good. Like, I'm not saying like, he's overrated or anything, but like, I think it's clearly a bit the system. I think like in a normal midfield, it just gets a bit more because, obviously when you pass off to other midfielders who are more threatening, then you become part of the chain that gets more goals. So generally more balance means that everyone gets more score involvements. But yeah, as I said, it's just a bit, tiny bit lacking at the moment. But it is what it is. And, Hawks are a good team, good coach. We'll see by the end of the season what they can conjure up, if anything.
Yeah, it's definitely there's definitely plenty of opportunities for Hawthorn to continue to punch up into that top 8. Maybe probably at least pushing top 6, probably not pushing top 4 considering how stacked top half of the competition currently is. But it's still a long season to go. Like we're only in the end of round 9, so we've still got plenty of games to go.
Yeah, plenty of games to go. They should get players back within the next few weeks. Yeah, as I said, I'm not too concerned. And yeah, as I said, like away from home, like taking Fremantle to the sword, being in a winning position, it's not too bad.
No,
It's generally what you want most of the times when you're playing top 4 away from home.
Yeah, for sure.
It's just, wins are better, obviously. But yeah, shall we move on now to the Gabba?
Yes, we're heading up to the Gabba where the Lions, our reigning premiers, hosted Carlton, and with an 11-point margin. I don't think people were exactly expecting this game to be that close. Brisbane did win out though, 14-16-100 to 13-11-89.
Yeah, so I think Carlton just sort of woke up in the mirror realm. I should say, obviously, I think like most people, I sort of watched the second game, so I don't really know that much about this game. But I did see the start, and it just looked terrible. Like it was very lethargic. There was no tackle pressure, and they just had the inability to stop the Brisbane's outside game, and it looked done early. As I said, I watched a little bit of it, and I was like, oh well. As I said, doesn't seem that interesting. I'll just watch the rest of the Port game and see what happens afterwards. And, as I said, I didn't actually see any of this good play, but I did hear that Carlton legitimately threatened in the last half, especially late, doubling their scoring shots as well as winning the ground and air contest in the second act of the game. Cripps, Walsh and Hewitt had mammoth third quarters. Cripper having a bit of a renaissance game after a very middling start to the season. And Mackay almost won the game on the wire. Mackay almost took the game down to the wire off his own boot with a 3-goal last quarter. To be fair on Carlton's first half as well, Froggy Leicester just decided to do Harris Andrews things. Harris Andrews was strangely quiet. I'm not really sure what happened there. And he might actually have a chance to add to his singular Brownlow tally vote, which, can you believe, players, and you probably have if you've read my notes, was against Carlton. It's his one Brownlow vote so far.
I'm not surprised that it was. Oh, in 2018?
Yeah.
I mean, Carlton haven't exactly been good for like 15 years, so that's also not surprising.
Yeah, it was back when he was playing more as a pinch forward, which I don't think he was ever someone who excelled at. Did share spoils of coaches' votes, I think, with Lachie Neale. So there's a very good chance. 20 possessions, a hell of a lot of intercepts, 11 marks, kicking at 95%. Oh, sorry, disposal at 95% accuracy.
Well, now that the umpires can actually see stats for Brownlow medal voting, there's a fair chance he gets at least one vote here, which I think is very, very good.
Yeah, as I said, I can't say I've watched the game, but I'd like to see it happen. But who knows? As I said, they tend to be a bit midfield biased. And there were some good performances like Levi Ashcroft, had a very pretty game. He kicked a couple of really nice goals. He was very as I said, with Carlton not stopping the outside game, there was a lot of good outside performance. I think Levi sort of outperformed his brother in that regard. And then Bruce Revel had a really good game late. Missed a few gettable goals, but really influenced the contest. But yeah, like as I said, when Carlton got back into the game, I think they were fairly respectable. As I said, I think the second quarter was about evenish. They won the last quarter. A lot of good signs. Jagger Smith playing well. Will Hayward finally hitting a bit of form, which is a bit overdue, especially after his suspension. Sort of owes him one. Ollie Holland's having a good game. We love to see that after all that's happened. And yeah, as I said, it was really only a few performers, here and there that sort of, on the fringe of their list that sort of struggled, especially the defensive line too. I don't think they really had the best of game. I don't think Brisbane ever sort of stopped scoring. It's just, Carlton were able to pick up momentum, stop a bit more of the outside run too. Brisbane, being Brisbane, still keeping the scoreboard ticking over. That's sort of why you can't just roll over and die in the first quarter against them, They sort of, left their run a bit late. I guess it was the second quarter looking at the match lineup, but
yeah. Brisbane are also one of those teams that can be contended with very well in the first half, but will absolutely explode in the second half. But in this one, it was kind of the opposite for both teams. Like Carlton had a slow first half, excellent second half for the most part. Brisbane, somewhat slow first quarter, started picking it up in the second, and then they slowed down a little bit in the third from what I read. But otherwise, it wasn't like the worst. It was just very. It was just a game, really. I feel like Brisbane were kind of playing with their food because they probably weren't expecting too much out of this game. But Carlton, Carlton are trying to, prove everyone wrong, which currently is not looking great.
The best 1-17 or whatever it is so far?
Yeah,
1-8, isn't it?
Yeah. Well, they've lost 7.
They actually probably are.
They've lost 7 games straight, which does not favour them in the slightest. I'm pretty sure the last game they won was round 1 against us.
Yeah.
So
which was only just.
Yeah, which was.
So Richmond should have won that game. They're definitely the best one, and they're probably one of the best 1-7 teams of all time. But it doesn't mean much because he's still at the bottom of the ladder, and your fans are still crying. So, also, Logan Morris and Kyle Lohman played very well. That's about all I can say personally from that.
Yeah, there isn't actually a huge amount to come out of this game. It was kind of bruise-free, no injuries, no MRO.
Yeah,
it was fairly self-standard.
Yeah, it was actually pretty, wasn't it? Because there was a few games where tackling was really down. Yeah, this one was actually a bit bruise-free. Carlton 38 tackles, Brisbane 50 tackles. 50 might be about average.
I'd say 50 is probably about average. At least in terms of tackles that actually stick, that's probably about average. Yeah,
I can actually tell you. Again, Wheelo, great website. Actually has little bars that tell you all this sort of stuff. How the game performance goes towards average. 50 is slightly below average.
Okay.
And 38, in terms of game total, is very much below average.
Fair enough. All right, let's jump over now to the second Friday clash. It still kind of really bothers me that there are 2 Friday games purely for the fact that they're not double headers. They are actually clash games. But we're heading over to the Adelaide Oval. Sorry, you want to say?
Yeah, this is a bit of a side turn. I don't know if you heard, but apparently they're confirming that there's going to be a few more Friday double headers.
I did see that. I don't know if I'm much of a fan. If they're actual double headers,
didn't they just announce an extra round 0 while they're at it? While they're giving out the good news
at this point. But yeah, so we're heading over to the Adelaide Oval now, where Port Adelaide host the Western Bulldogs, and with a 2-point margin, the Dogs just held on 10-14, 74 to 10-12, 72.
Yeah, I actually didn't. I've now realized I hadn't actually known how much they'd won by because I walked away before the last shot was actually kicked through. Not really that salty, just it's I didn't need to see this.
Yeah, that's very fair.
Yeah, but yeah, big scrappy from both teams who are just desperate to get a win on the board. More Bulldogs last week. They're sort of arcing up, whereas Port's been arcing up for a bit. Did manage to get the win against Geelong, but otherwise probably should have a few more wins on the board. But very decent pressure, just allowed for a very tight contest that was really only determined by a few big Port turnovers, which gave the Bulldogs just a few easy goals, I will say, because as I said, when it was a normal ball movement, I think the Bulldogs, while the defensive pressure, which is, not what you normally associate with Bulldogs, was very spot on, they were just dropping a few easier marks. Their chains, they sort of made chains harder for themselves. As I said, it was a pretty good pressure game. Movement was pretty tough for both teams. The Dogs, I thought, were very clever. They actually forced Port into a short kicking game to try and force turnovers, especially early on. Like, it really worked out. They got a few forward half intercepts, and they were able to get the early advantage over Port. Like, Port just looked like they couldn't move the ball at all. But obviously, the risk of running that is that once you break through, you tend to get really good movement after, and that's where Port was starting to get the game back. I think their back half movement, when they did break through, was very, very good. As I said, a bit opposite for the Dogs, though. But, I do think the Port defenders do need to get a bit of props because, as I said, the Bulldogs had a lot of inside 50s. I think the inside differential was about, I think it was about 11 or so. Maybe even a bit more. Inside 50s, 35 to 59. So in territory-wise, like, Port had no chance in this game. But obviously, we're talking about a 2-point margin, so they did. And as I said, in a game of poor kicks, I think the top level of play was really, really high. I know this is normally a case for both teams, maybe a bit less so for the Bulldogs. But Butters and Bontempelli were so good this game with their ball use. Because as I said, I think the Doggies had a lot more support, especially in their forward half. English, Sanders, Richards, Freer, Dale all had really fantastic game. I know Dale's on the back half, but he was still really good, especially pushing up. But what Butters and Bontempelli were able to do and create, it's just a level above. And you see why the Victorian teams are really going after Butters. As I said, the Bulldogs, though, I think they've really had a lot of advantages in this game. And they really could have killed this game in the fourth. They dominated the fourth, but only kicked 1-7. Just kept Port in the game. Luckily, through a few big mistakes, unfortunately, for Port, late, Port just coughed up another, I wouldn't say goal, but it was point late to Artie Jones, who only just get the ball in from the skin of his teeth. Dropped one of the simplest marks he will take in his life. Takes the ball to the boundary, just keeps it in, and then finds space to kick the point that is needed. Still good to see, because I like Artie Jones, and he's back from his short-term injury. As I said, wasn't the prettiest game, but I think both fan bases know where they're sort of at. And, it's just a shame for Port fans. Obviously, a few Port fans are like, doing the Cochrane calculations, working out how much they have to lose this season to make sure they have enough draft points or whatever to pick in. I'd still rather make finals personally, but that's just me. Whereas the Bulldogs just get the when they need to get back into the logjam. And, as I said, when they're in and about the logjam, I think they'll set up for a good second half of the season. Hopefully.
I think so.
They just, as many wins as they can get before the bye is what they're sort of looking for.
Pretty much, especially with their defense still being quite depleted, no Lobb and no O'Donnell being the key players down there that they're missing. Brico Karmas is doing some fantastic work, thankfully, as kind of the tentpole of that back line right now, I would say. Their forward line, there isn't really much to really say in terms of an actual tentpole, because both their key tentpoles are out. In terms of the Dogs forward line, it actually doesn't look too bad even without Sam Darcy in there. Aaron Norton's still presenting very well. Obviously, Artie Jones coming back in is a huge difference in terms of what they're able to do at the ground level. Otherwise, their other smaller players are doing some fantastic work. Davidson, when he's been able to kind of rotate through his forward line and semi-wing duties. Like, I know he's a tall player, but he kind of tends to drift up a little bit more. He's been doing some great work. And then obviously with Tim English back, granted he will not be playing next week. I'll mention that in a moment.
It's a
You know,
very big
it
concern.
really does make a huge difference when they have a reliable rock out there, and the fact that like I know they still need to get this game time and this development into their younger rocks, but like it really
Yeah.
does. They are such a different team without English.
Yeah, and it's a bit of a shame because obviously Will Lewis, is he? I know Lachlan Smith was like the second rock, but I think Will Lewis also took a few duties, but he could actually play forward this match. And well, he didn't have a great game. Like his two goals very late. One of them was free as you get.
Mm.
But it's still good to bob up here and there. But yeah, he'll be pushed into duties. I will say I won't disagree with the Bigger Kamas comment. But I do think he's like trying fairly hard. Because as I said, I don't think he's like I view Buka Kamas as a bit like McAndrews, as like I think is better when he can just sort of roam off and do his own thing.
I agree.
He just doesn't have that at the moment. But I think they almost conceded sort of the Georgiades matchup because that's who he sort of took most of the match. He got beaten fairly convincingly. But as I said, the other pressure, like Selwood coming in, helping the contests, really helped Buku out at times. And
I agree.
Bussinger more and more is, really having an effect.
I think Selwood has been a very, very important get for the Dogs, especially now that
Yeah,
he
I
has this
think
time
night
to
and
actually
day.
kind of showcase what he's capable of too.
Yeah, absolutely. Like I think this is sort of why, and I think in this game too, I think the Bulldogs actually went back to sort of their form that they were in before the injuries.
Mm-hmm.
They just clearly didn't quite have the players to really execute that well. But I think it was good, like even with the injuries, even with like their best players not available, like the difference between the last few weeks and the weeks where they were getting smashed was we're starting to see that shape again, which is really good signs because it A says that this isn't just individuals, this is a part of the system,
Yeah.
and B it indicates growth of some pretty young players.
Yeah, no, it does. And I'm just gonna have to kind of, because it's only the good comparison I have right now, but it's like going to Essendon and like with
Yeah.
how like how riddled with injury they were
Mm.
last season. And even going into this season where they're still missing quite a few key players. Granted, in the game that they had this week, they brought back a ton of players and it made so much of a difference. It was great to see.
Mm.
But like the fact that they're still missing Nick Martin, for an example, who has not been able to play a decent game of footy because of his injuries over the past 2 years. They've been able to blood younger defenders, or even wing players, depending on if Nick Martin wants to rotate. He's normally that kind of player who does, because he has that speed, and get that experience into them. And it's really helped especially in this season, because now we're starting to see how talented those kids are when they have an actual system
Mm.
around them. Like Perkins, Roberts, um,
Uh,
Al
Archer
Hooley,
May,
Archer May,
Hawley,
um,
um, is it Farrow?
Keiko, Farrow,
Keiko, yeah.
um, the
Even
rising
Blackerstone
star
when
for
he's
this
not
week,
rocking
which we'll
is
talk
fine.
about a bit later on. There's a ton of players in that system now that are really thriving, having a proper core around them. And even though Essendon aren't winning games, they're still putting on some decent performances for the most part. And I think
Yeah,
there's a similar situation with these younger Dogs players who are coming in with still a core system around them despite the injuries,
yeah,
and are able to play our games, and in this case, win games.
yeah, exactly. And like I can know, like it also shows just like the difference when you have a good system as well. Like, better link up players in your better half of the system. Because as I said, Bonds and Pelly, he links up with anyone. Like his disposal will make the next disposal better, have a better disposal. Even
Yes.
Ed Richards, I think, has a bit about him. He can actually find, because he penetrates a bit, especially with hands. Not hands, with his kick. He can normally find players with a bit of space, and that will allow them to make a bit of a better next decision. Bontempelli is more like the piercing handball sort of person. But even like a Nick Caulfield who comes into this game, hasn't really played much over the last few years, sort of plays as spare man, and honestly, like again, not groundbreakingly good. But as I said, decent enough. As I said, on the flip side, as I said, despite all this, like it's still not great. Like Port had a pretty decent scoring conversion for their lack of inside 50s, which was good. I felt Ewan McKinlay had a few really good moments. A bit less so, but still positive. Christian Moraes. Jack Watkins had a really nice goal. It was just a few moments. Like, I was a bit of a shame, like, this game was a few of our more senior or getting their players. Like the Logan Evans intercept, kicks one a bit too shallow. I think it was Riley West just steals it, runs it into goal.
Yep.
Alia, handballing. I think behind a player, Bulldogs get it for a goal. And even though he had a pretty good game otherwise, Jordan Sweet in the last moments had Lachlan Smith as a ruck opponent, had a pretty much free tap. Smith, a bit out of position, whatever. So he had free, to do whatever he wants, and he just hits it right down to a Bulldogs player. And that was the entry that got Artie Jones his behind. And if he just taps it forward or whatever, the game probably ends up being a draw. So the final point is, like, as I said, as much as it's good seeing Port Adelaide close in this game, I still hope they dissect a few of these, like, late murder decision makings.
Mm-hmm.
Not so much to make the players feel bad or guilty or whatever, but, it's all about just taking the time in these moments to take the best option that's available to you. And then more often than not, you end up winning. Whereas, as I said, I think Jordan Sweet, he was only a 50-odd gamer, like, mind you. Like, he is older, but, he's not that much game experience. As I said, I think that just tap was more, he got a bit excited, it's like, oh, it's a free hit, I'll try and hit it forward a bit, but obviously just hit it to an area where there wasn't any players, assuming that there was no stoppage breakdown, mind you.
Yeah.
Really say that. I don't know what Port's system is in those situations.
It is very interesting that, like, one moment could have changed the entirety of the outcome, which is like, and I know that's that's kind of the whole point of this, like, this game that we play, or that they play, we don't play.
Yeah.
Is like the game. It's all about moments and momentum shifts.
Yeah.
And taking opportunities when you see them. That's why, like, intercept possessions are so important in a game, in just how this game functions. But yeah,
it's why you don't get too upset about, your Josh Lyes, who had probably a mediocre game, or, for the Bulldogs, I think there was one who had or Harvey Gallagher, he had 3 behinds. He really should have capitalised a bit more. You don't, I mean, maybe Gallagher's getting a bit older now, but you know what I mean? It's like, you tend to forgive younger players, when you know that you have, like, an older core around them that most of the time makes those better decisions. So, as I said, it can be a bit fickle, but that's where it's the leadership group. Like, okay, I made a mistake here. This is what I should have done. And, this can be a learning experience for all of us.
Yeah, exactly right. And, like, you mentioned that Port Adelaide had less inside 50s to the Dogs, right? It was like 30.
Oh, way less. It's like last week. Like, Port really shouldn't have beat Adelaide, and they really shouldn't have beat the Bulldogs. It's just, with advantage, they lost to Saints and Hawthorn. Without advantage, they also lost.
To that favour, it shows, like, what, 22 scoring shots out of less than 40 inside 50s?
I can give you 62.9 scores per inside 50 compared to the Dogs' 40.7.
Thank you.
So the Dogs a bit under average, Port well above average.
It shows that despite how mangled and beaten it is, Port Adelaide's defence did a fantastic job in stretching out that Dogs' forward line and preventing those inside 50s from having a more dominant impact. And on Port's side of things, the fact that they had less inside 50s and still managed a decent score shows how creative they can be inside 50, whether it's from set shot, whether it's from play. It shows that they know how to convert, even if it's, like, just a minor score. Like, they're able to get the more out of their inside 50s, despite how limited they are.
Yeah, well, Georgiadis is always a coin flip these days. Again, miss the easy ones, get the hard ones. But I think it's the support around him. Corey Durden only kicked a goal, but was involved in a lot of other plays that set him up. The McKinlay goal was just one that you normally expect players to miss. And I think, Logan Evans got one, sort of long bomb. So it was like a few more players just, chipping in a bit more. But yeah, it really wasn't actually. As I said, apart from the Mitch Georgiadis one, I think like Western Bulldogs actually did a good job of forcing some more big play to come from the outside. As I said, it was just the one matchup that they just couldn't, which is fair enough.
Yeah, no,
You
but
know,
this
Georgiadis is one of the best targeted players in the competition.
oh yes.
He's targeted the most, and he has an insane mark inside 50 rate.
Yeah, he's got some fantastic hands, which is insane.
Yeah.
But yeah, it goes to show that Port does have a system that works. Just don't have
Yeah.
the personnel there for it to be sustainable in some situations.
Yeah, I think it's just like the difference between like the start of the season and the end of the season is, again, they've just sort of made sure that their turnovers aren't quite in dangerous positions. They'll still give a few dumb ones away. And like, you know, as much as I like point out like the Aaliyah one, like he saved a lot of goals. Like I'm not saying like those players like, you know, hang their head and
Aaliyah is
off next
easily
week.
in the upper echelon of like defenders in the league right now. He is so good.
Yeah, he's turning MS into all Australian form again. This is like as good as it's been in a couple of years, so it's really good to see. But you know, as I said, he does turn the ball over occasionally in very weird ways.
This is also true.
Uh,
All right, on the injury side of things, Miles Bergman went out with a toe injury. I don't know which toe. I don't know how bad. Hopefully on the minor side of things. And Tim English is sadly out once again with concussion, so he will be missing this week's game.
Yeah, and I will say, because I got the message today, it is confirmed that Bergman will be sidelined when put on the Yatapulti outfit in Sir Doug Nicholls Round coming up. So Miles Bergman out, and we can only assume well, he is out because he failed a concussion test.
Yes,
so.
correct. So he will miss this week's game, guaranteed. On the MRO side of things, Ed Richards was fined $1,000 for contact with an umpire. And just going back to our previous game, turns out there was some MRO reports from that game, so I'm just going to quickly run through them. Connor McKenna fined $1,000 for contact with an umpire. Levi Ashcroft fined $1,000 for instigating a melee. And Sam Walsh fined $1,000 for striking Levi Ashcroft, which probably resulted in said melee.
Yeah, well, as I said, it's so funny because like the Levi Ashcroft one, that was the one where he ducked.
Yes,
you know, and it was a very smug duck, which has caused the AFL world to hate him. Which is probably good. I could use it. No, okay, I'm not going to say I could use some Ashcroft hate, but like, you know, I'm still a bit salty that Brisbane
I'm back on that.
I'm back
on hating the Rochelle train, and I'll explain that on Sunday.
yeah, but like, you know, as I said, it was funny because obviously he instigated the melee, but he also got a free kick from it. Yeah. So like, I think we'll take that 9 times out of 10.
Yeah, I would say so.
But you know, it's why umpires got to be very careful, and you know, it's hard because you know there's a lot to look at with those sort of things. But I would like them seeing some more ramp up fines for instigating melees, or like baiting other players to try and hit you. You still shouldn't do it, mind you, but like, you know, as I said, yeah, it is very hard when like a player's right in your face and you want to push them away without doing anything too much.
Oh yeah.
You know.
All right. Let's jump over now to our Saturday games, starting off at Marvel Stadium, where North Melbourne hosted the Sydney Swans, and with an 8-point margin. I was talking about this the other day, that it turns out that North Melbourne really are a smoky team against the Swans, and they kind of have been for a while.
Oh, yeah.
But the fact that, like, this was a really interesting game, just as a whole, to be honest. The margin was 8 points, with Sydney winning out, of course, thankfully, because I had a perfect round this game because of it, God bless. 16,905 to 14,1397.
Yeah, I was one short of the perfect round because I tipped Port, but also ESPN swallowed my Fremantle tip, and they just gave me nothing. Which again could just be because I use a crappy laptop and maybe didn't press it on the trackpad. I'll have no idea. I'm blaming ESPN.
You can blame ESPN.
Please refund me my one tip. Anyway, in this game though, I reckon it's sort of a good mixed bag for North, because I legitimately I think they look great. Obviously, offense was absolutely fantastic against Sydney, who are one of the best outside mitigating teams in the competition. But they still had a good chunk of offense, and it wasn't just, you know, the inside midfield. I think this was like one of the most balanced I've seen this through his midfield. And it was sort of led by LDU, who gave James Jordan one of the worst games of his 10 careers. However, the bad news is that their transition defense sold their backline down the river, created the most pressure-free and central shots you'll see in modern football. It was so interesting because I was curious about what Clarko, and I don't normally go to the presses, but this was really bad. But Clarko didn't seem too fussed about it. Like he was saying, oh yeah, the amount of pressure that we did to stop Sydney's movement for most of the game was good enough. And as I said, they're just going to break through a few times, which was maybe eyebrow raising. Maybe that's just what's going to happen. Maybe if they don't do that, Sydney win by 145 to 30. So again, it's easier to criticize the coaching when the bad plays don't look good.
Very true.
But back for the good things for North. They didn't let Sydney have a shot within 50 meters to goal, which is pretty fantastic for 51 entries. Again, the backline did not play that badly. It was also the lowest entries that Sydney have had this year, and the only time they've lost the inside 50 count this year, and they did it by 16. So North had a fair chance to win this too. Lucky and Curtis, unfortunately, just had forgettable nights. It's happened a few times where North's been in a position to win, but Curtis and Larky just have had rare bad nights out. I don't think there's too much in it.
No.
And you got to give a shout to Sydney player Will Edward. He would get the scalp as he not only kept Larky goalless with 8 possessions, but also took a night high in intercept marks and spoils. So for a debut game, not really much better you could do. Blakey generated the ball deep. Generated deep from Sydney when they were able to get the ball back from North Central. But as I said, North midfield looked surprisingly balanced with O'Sullivan and Stevens really supporting that interior group. So at least defensively, pretty mid. It's not just a stoppage level base game. They're starting to get a few midfield intercepts. They're starting to get a few outside movement from halfback. This is offensive growth. As I said, it's just that question is do we criticize the defense or do we go, oh, they're playing Sydney? They've done this to most teams anyway. Do you just shrug your shoulders?
I think in this case, you kind of do just shrug your shoulders because Sydney are the best team, pretty much the best team in the comp right now. They're sitting first. They're not a comfortable sitting first. Yeah. They did get dropped a second briefly. They've got such a fantastic core in that midfield, and again, they're still missing one of their more high-profile players in Errol Goulden on the wing. Their forward line, granted they were missing Charlie Curnow, still performed very, very well. And even though they got shut down to the lowest amount of inside 50s that they've had all season, 16-9 is still decent conversion out of that. It's just hang on, I can do the math in my head. It's just under 50%, which isn't which isn't bad at all, really.
That's good mathing.
Yep.
So that's again slightly above average. Will say too, again, I think it does come from the pressure because again, they a lot of Sydney shots were central, and this is where again I do think there has to be some accountability because again you can shrug your shoulders, but it is very hard, especially against a good team, to give them less pressure because then you just give the confidence that they know they're going to score. And as I said, it's, do you want to be chasing tail against Sydney? That's the question I have. Do you put yourself in a position to win the game? Because as I said, their forward line is you can argue maybe if they convert it better, they win this game. But again, I don't know. It's I give them a pass for this game, but I wouldn't give it a B+ or anything.
I do agree in the fact that
you take it.
North could have made a huge statement in winning this game.
Yeah.
However, I think the fact that they competed for all 4 quarters and kept the game extremely close by the end is still good enough. And it shows that even though
Mm.
most people, us included, did not expect
Yeah.
North to have kind of become this quote unquote good this season. I say quote unquote
Mm.
just purely for where they're sitting in the ladder position. Um,
Yeah. I don't
like
know.
the fact that they're able to compete with most teams at the moment goes to show that like their midfield core has developed really well so far. The inclusion
Mm.
of like Luke Parker rotating through defense, I think was a stroke of genius, and it has made such a huge impact in terms of
Yeah.
how they move the ball outside of defense. And even though Larky and Curtis can get shut down pretty easily, you can still have Cam Zohar up there. You can still have um, I am blanking on names right now. Um,
Um, I mean, it's not really that much else. I mean, like, yeah, it's weird.
I mean,
Like, a lot of
I
the
guess
players they
LDU
had
does push up every now and then,
wide.
but like Zohar,
Yeah.
Lucky, and Curtis are kind
Like,
of the big
Zaha
three.
actually, I think when you looked at his possessions, I think he had more possessions in the back half. Because he was very, again, he was involved, and I like this move. Like, he was a bit like involved in the defensive half of transition, which again, I think they're just going to mix up how they move the ball forward, and I think in the last month or so they have, which is really good.
Mm.
It's just getting a bit more value out of Costanti, Trembath. Obviously, unfortunately, didn't have a good game this week. It was really just their tolls, and they don't really have that many ground level players apart from Paul Curtis.
Mm.
So I guess that is like the reliance of having him fire. But I think that's just where North are anyway.
Yeah, and I think
You
that's
know,
that's something that Sydney's defense very much picked up is the fact that if the ball goes to ground, it's
mm,
only really Curtis that has a huge impact at ground level. Whereas
yeah,
if you can shut down Curtis and make have effective packs to shut down Larky,
mm,
it kind of does stop a lot of North's offense in that forward 50 at the very
yeah,
least. And granted, 27 scoring shots, still pretty good. 14-13,
yeah,
decent conversion. Um, but yeah, it shows that like Sydney are very tactical in the way they operate defensively, and
yeah,
they're able to shut down a majority of teams very very quickly, even though they will still give them avenues to score.
yeah, exactly. But yeah, as I said, I do think as I said, it's just like it's weird because like we've seen this before where North has really taken teams to the sword. But I think before, and like I remember like games against Collingwood, a lot of them is get up to like a really fast start and then just like capitulate halfway through.
Mm.
Where at least in this game, where yeah, they got the loss, maybe they could have won, like, but at least it was through like a decent effort across the board. Like this wasn't just like, oh, roll the LDU dice and hope they land favorably. Um, you know. So yeah, I gotta give them credit to that. I won't say skeptical, but like I do think like this is okay. I think North are like back on where they should be on overall projection. It's just like, it's been years and they're only just on par.
I think a lot
So,
of it comes
you
down to
know,
the fact that this is like the second year where they've actually had Clarko with them full time. Like last year, that was the first year
yeah,
they
I
finally got
guess.
him
Yeah.
full time, and like because of all of the Hawthorn
Mm,
drama and all of that in the
yeah.
first 2 years. So the fact that he's actually able to be there full time as a proper coach and actually develop this core and these young kids into the
Mm,
team that he wants to coach. The reason why he said yes to coaching North. I think that now we're starting to see some of that come to fruition, and they're finally on like that upwards trajectory that we kind of saw a little bits of last season, but we're now starting to see a lot more consistency out of them this season.
yeah, exactly. Also, Alzakini, yeah, is still like one of the best players in the
Oh
league,
yes,
and is,
obviously.
you know, sort of, as I said, people don't like put him in the Brownlow conversation, but like, again, even though Sydney's had a lot, like he has been some of the best players. He's always been like in and around the best players, especially with Kerno not really firing. Well, he had one game where he fired, but you know what I mean. So it's going to have a lot of free votes. So
It's
watch out for that.
yeah. Is this the only real thing about the possibility of Heaney never really winning a Brownlow is because Sydney is so stacked with solid midfield players that they will just take votes off
Yeah,
of each other. Like the Warner brothers Papley, Golden when he's fit. Your Kerno
Yeah.
whenever he has a very good game. Whatever. Like,
I can't say Warner's had a top
Blake.
3 game this year, at least
No,
not
he
off
has
my
he has
head.
had some very quiet games this season. He's
Yeah.
been consistent, but it's not been like a breakout sort of game. But
Yeah.
like, Nick
I think
Blakey
he's
is
had a lot
one.
more pure midfield time as well.
Yeah, that's right. Malcolm Roses
Anyway.
Jr. He'll probably get Brownlow votes for the game last week.
Yeah, the 7 goal.
there's always going to
Tends to
be
happen.
players, especially at Sydney, that will take votes off of Heaney, and why it would always be
Yeah.
hard for him to win a Brownlow.
Yeah.
But jumping over to the MRO side of things, Jacob Constanti was fined twice in this game. $1,500 for rough conduct against Tom Papley, and $1,000 for engaging in a melee. And Tom Papley was fined $1,875 for engaging in said melee. Which is really funny because
he wasn't a
they're
first
former
defender
teammates
as well.
So there's
true.
Possibly a bit of beef there too. Who knows?
I don't know. Yeah, so Tom Papley might even know.
It's also just Tom Papley doing Tom Papley things.
Yeah, really.
Yeah.
It's like, as much as you like to think that everyone like knows all the rookies' name, that like there's always more than you think, because it's not just Costanti. It's all the Cat Bs and all that. They tend to train on their own, so maybe who knows? They actually really had much to do with each other. But yeah.
All right. Let's jump over now to NG Stadium up in New South Wales, where the Giants hosted the Bombers. I mentioned last week, actually no, I didn't mention it last week, but we had a discussion earlier in the week when teams were released that this could be a very sneaky opportunity for the Bombers to cause an upset. And honestly, it wasn't that far off. With a 14-point margin, the Giants did win out 16-703 to 13-11-89.
Well, if I vaguely remember, I did sort of say that, while I think Essendon have chances of winning, it's just very hard to tip for them when they just don't restrict back half movement. That's where Giants got like most of their score. In fact, I can probably tell you now, they scored 10-3 from their defensive half, which is about a third of their score, which is pretty good. So, but despite that, the clinical movement that you can have when you only have an Essendon level of resistance on the outside, the Dons did try everything in their power to get a lightly win, and they did look very promising. I think they had a bit of collapse. Was it the fourth quarter or just before the 3/4 time break? They had a bit of a lead, and then it just sort of...
it was late in the third. Yeah. The Bombers started their comeback. Oh, no, sorry. The Giants started their comeback.
Giants,
The Bombers were fairly stable halfway through the second, going into the third. And then, then the Giants
like 20 points up, I think.
Yeah, something like that. And then the Giants started clawing their way back in.
Yeah, I said after Archie Perkins kicked the goal, which, while he did have a good game, won't do the Perkin haters any good. But anyway... the problem for the Dons is that good shooting couldn't prevent a lot of their entries just from being swept up by the Giants. Laverde had a nice game playing loose against his old club, with Buckley and Idons, of course, being pillars of defence. I will say Laverde's kicks are still awful. But intercept system-wise, not much you can complain about, and probably one of his best games. He's actually prove yourself from him.
Actually been like a fairly consistent player for the Giants defense. Like, obviously, Giants have their backline core, but the fact that he's been able to kind of slot in fairly well, and even though his kicking is still awful, he's able to do enough to provide strong defensive efforts. Shows that, like,
I think
the Giants
this used to be a huge thing.
It's just good for the system.
This used to be a huge thing back in the day when transition wasn't quite... Like, it was more of you had set players that were required, you didn't have your fullbacks running out. And you always had a few players that just weren't given the license to kick. I think the biggest one that I really remember of this is Zach Dawson for St Kilda and Fremantle. Like, he was not allowed to kick the ball. Whenever he kicked the ball, you just cringed. There was always like a half-backer just running around the back for an easy handball. And I think Laverde's almost to that point. Like, they've got other better users of the ball. Just don't kick it. Don't kick it, son. But like, if you believe hard enough, maybe you should. I don't know. I'm not your coach. For a few hit and miss games. Stringer, Daniels and Green both made good forward play on and off the ball and made the forward line click a tiny bit better. whilst Bedford, I think, did a lot of small things up forward and chipped in for a few goals. Talking about the upside for the Bombers, I think it's more and more apparent. Like, Peter Wright is legitimately coming the next best pure forward ruck player behind Jackson. Obviously, I'm not saying like as a pure ruckman or a pure forward, just in that niche category. And whilst Roberts' 40-plus possession game was pretty easy, there's a lot of ball back there, and it wasn't quite as threatening as some of the GWS halfbackers. It was no doubt as impressive, especially for the young player. Is that who was Rising Star, I'm guessing?
No, it was not. I will get to the Rising Star later on in the breakdown.
Fine. Archer may capitalize well. Nick Cox had another solid outing from his return from his very long stint away from football, and sort of mentioned it. Archie Perkins not only played all right, but also used the ball well, which is something I don't associate with Archie Perkins. I could always give him a bit of thing. He's a bit of a Essendon whipping boy, so I like to give him a bit of credit. Like, I don't really rate him too much as a player, but you always get to give credit where credit's due.
Yeah, it's like,
especially if you're one of those
as
up
we were
and down
talking
players.
about before in regards to like the Dogs and the injuries and stuff. Like this, we saw there's a lot of promising signs in this game out of the development of these players. Like, even though we know they're not going to win every game, they
we're way too thin on the upper talent levels.
Yeah, if they're lucky, they might get to 5 wins this season. Who knows? They were lucky to sneak out a win already at the very least. Same with Richmond, I guess, against West Coast. But the fact that there's a lot of positive development here. Brad Scott knows what he's doing with this young core right now. Obviously, there's still a lot of moves he still has to make in terms of building a proper team. He probably wants to look at the trade period again. Maybe there'll be something again with Merritt, who knows. But the fact of the matter is that they made wholesale changes in this game. They swapped 6 players, and it made such a huge difference to how the team kind of functioned. And part of that was we don't like to kind of call it out directly, but Ben Mackay is kind of being doing literally nothing for so much money. So there's possibly something there in the future to look at. But in terms of just,
Mackay, I think, was a front-end loaded contract, so I don't know if he's actually on that much money anymore. But
it's still there's still so many holes in this team.
System and opportunity.
Yeah.
But as I said, it wasn't I said it was a bit hit or miss. Essendon's backline, they're still young. You still have almost every forward contributed to the ball, to the score line. So you know what I mean? It's they didn't have him, but I think it was just an opportunity to give a bit more responsibility to some of their players, because it's almost even though he's out of form, it is like taking a safety net away when you remove Ben Mackay from the team. And I know he's out of form, whatever, but he's still by far the most oldest player in the back line, because otherwise you're talking about Redman, if you think that is defensive enough to actually count as a pure defender, or Zach Reed, and Zach Reed's 24, 23?
Yeah, not even be that old. He's approaching mature age, I'm pretty sure. So yeah, you're right. Ben Mackay is the most senior player down there. But if you're out of form, just because you're a senior player and a veteran, doesn't entirely give you the right just to exist on field. You've got to still earn that spot.
Yeah. And I think, as I said, I think the thing that would most please Essendon was the bottom scale of players wasn't really that bad. Their worst performer, Supercoach ranking is you got Zach Reed down there. He was sort of playing on Riccardi, who, 2 goals, 1 limited possession. It's whatever. Archie Wicks as well. It's wow, sort of forward player. Just sometimes you don't really get into the game. Still, what is it? 9 disposals. Not the end of the world. Dyson Sharp, he was playing really well, unfortunately, until he got injured. 17 possessions for half a game of football. 10 contested possessions, 5 clearances.
Yeah, his numbers were really solid.
it's like, oh, it's just Dyson Sharp, but like, you know, Giants midfield's fairly lacking, and that's the other. Oh, sorry, it isn't the other one, but like, that's what we're gonna sort of be talking about soon. Whereas, like, like comparatively, like you ever take the Dons bowl use over the Giants, in the center, which is concerning, mainly for
It,
the Giants.
it is concerning, especially, but like you look at who's in that Bombers midfield. And it's like, granted, it's only really like Merritt and McGrath, but you'd still take the reliability of those two, like for most
Yeah,
cases.
not McGrath. You mean
Yeah, no, not McGrath. McGrath
Durham?
plays off backline. Yes, I did mean Durham. Thank you.
Yeah,
I knew who I meant. I
yeah,
just put the wrong name to it. But you know,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah. I get you. Yeah, but I guess we will talk about the Giants because again, like I don't want to slag them too much of this game. They got the win. They're a bit injured. It's whatever. But like the gap between their best and their worst play is so frustrating. Their defense is really good until they cough up the ball in their own forward half or the opponent's forward half. Back half turnovers. A bit like Port. Leak goals. Their forward line, really, really great. Unless their link up players aren't having a good time, then they crash and plummet. Ash, Whitfield, Idan, they all keep the ball really well. They're really good retainers. They will kick mark, kick mark, kick mark. But the problem is that all three of those players are their great ball users. And all the three of them, like, they don't push up that much. Maybe Whitfield will. But outside of their core, they're just not consistent enough with their ball in hand. Fonte's been really good, but he's not like a fantastic user of the ball. It's just, sort of changing up plays. His, defensively being all right. Their midfield unit, as much as Finn Callahan has a lot of praises, he will, produce a lot of clangers. And, doesn't get involved in that much outside plays. And, as I said, they tried Toby McMullen. He's sort of been an almost player for a long time now. Doesn't really have an impact. They're Phoenix Gothard and Ollie Hannaford probably have a couple of their worst games in a while. Obviously, Hannaford was sort of a soft sub in this game. And, it's just, as I said, even in that forward line, it's really only Brent Daniels that's really hitting up players. And even he was a bit shaky in this game. Still a lot of score involvements, 2 goals as well. So a really solid game. But, as I said, it's just, it's hard to read the GWS's stats because they're like, oh, decent kicking efficiency and like decent overall team uncontested possession, whatever. But when you look at the players that are having like, the bulk of the really, nice disposals, it's their halfbackers, they're fairly safe possessions. They will work it forward. I'm not like, claiming they're bad players or like stat padding or anything, but like, it almost puts too much responsibility on them creating a chain because they just don't trust like their generic plays to really make that much because they normally just fail. And they're not very good at stoppage. So if they do cough up possession or just force a ball up, they're looking to concede territory anyway.
Yeah.
So I think that's why the Giants just look so anemic at times, even though on paper they should really have enough. It's just not a very balanced team at the moment. And I think it's more than just the injuries that's causing a bit of their downfall at the time.
Yeah, I think it's definitely part of their system as to why they don't feel as impact. It doesn't feel as impactful of a midfield as it had previously.
Yeah.
Obviously, injuries aside, like there's definitely some sort of systematic issue at the core of this, and I don't know if it's players being played out of position. I don't know if it's because their rucks, haven't been the greatest. Again, Kieran Briggs might be back in, but he's
Briggs is
still
fine.
he's still not really in the best of form. Unfortunately, Nick Madden's out injured, so they can't come back in anyway. And I don't think they have anyone else after that at the moment who's like
Not that I know
in
of.
decent enough, or like isn't ready enough for like a key rock position. So yeah, it's probably just like a weird systematic issue from what we can tell. And yeah, coming up against the Bombers, you'd think it would still be enough. Especially when you have Bedford in decent form, Brent Daniels in fantastic form now that he's back in and playing consistently. But it's just not entirely there just yet. Um,
Yeah.
I don't know. That's probably something that
Oh,
they'll
yeah,
chip
sure.
away at as they get closer to mid-season anyway.
Yeah. Also, shout outs just because I'm looking at it. Nick Cox this game, one hit out, one hit out. Oh, sorry, one rock contest, one hit out to advantage, 100% win rate in both hit outs to advantage and just win rate in general. What a champion.
Love that for him. That's a good little bit of stat
Yeah.
padding right there.
Also, Jen Laverde, 6 contested defensive one-on-ones, 0 losses. Which I think is a bit of an overrated stat, but you know, technically Jack Buckley got 2. So, Jen Laverde, perfect, bit of a whipping boy.
I mean,
Jack Buckley, praised by the media, 50%, pathetic.
maybe that is why like the Verde kind of fits really well because he plays a specific role for that systematic backline, and it's kind
Yeah,
of
well, as I said, like
primarily on
Laverde one-on-one
one-on-ones.
was bad defensively at Essendon, and as I said, you get a bit more support and is able to focus more. His again when you're getting less turnovers from the midfield, which as I said, in this game where he's up against Mayhew, they're not really targeting as much in the turnover. Like they're probably looking up to hit up a Peter Wright if they had like a turnover or a even a Langford who didn't really get involved, but that's sort of who can get a sneaky lead, very reliable. So yeah, but as I said, like contested one-on-one, like they mean a lot in a whole sense in terms of like team and like how teams defend and whatever. And like if you are losing a lot of statistic one-on-ones, that might say a bit about your team, might say a bit about, your turnover rates or whatever. But on one game, it doesn't really mean much. And when people like scour the All Australians, it's like, oh, Callum Wilkie has an 18% one-on-one, while Jacob Wiedering is 19.5. Pathetic. It doesn't make a difference.
No, it doesn't make a difference.
Literally nothing.
Because the key number you kind of
it's
actually
really
looking
between
for is
it's a 10% swing. Like 10%, I reckon, is when it makes start swing. Like when you're in the 30%, like maybe you have a problem, maybe you're exposed too much, and even then, you would have to have like enough contests for it to matter.
yeah, and even then, it's all about how many contests are you making for one, rather than and that's the percentage it's based off of, not necessarily the percentage itself.
And like it's also as well, like again, when we're talking about like Mitch Georgiadis, it's like the ones, and I know he's really good at slowing from the boundary, but like the idea is right. Like if he's going wide, like you would rather turn that into like a one-on-one contest, have him go wide and just have him prove himself. At least like the one-on-one contest, because Mitch Georgiadis is a good lead. Normally they're very safe and easy targets to hit out. Teams just don't do it because you're not likely to score a goal. But like you'd much rather lose that than like have a ball go into the contest where it's like Mitch Georgiadis, like it's a 2-on-2, and Mitch Georgiadis is like a freak with his hands. Like you would rather him running to the side and losing the one-on-one. And in that case, like a stat where you're like getting told off for losing is like actually better for you.
Mm.
So again, doesn't mean that much. It's all very contextual. Stop making a be all and end all.
Yeah,
like
agreed.
spoils, intercept marks, all way more important.
Oh yeah, 100%. All right. On the injury side of things, as we had mentioned before, Dyson Sharp has gone out with a shoulder injury. I don't know if it's minor or major, but hopefully not too bad. And then on the MRO side of things, Harry Himmelberg was fined $2,000 for rough contact against Archie Perkins, and Phoenix Gothard was fined $1,000 for contact with an umpire. And now we get to the rising star, and the rising star for this week is Sullivan Roby.
Yeah, it makes sense. I feel like he's had a fantastic couple of weeks. I don't know whether this was just a sort of a off, what do you call it? Recent form or something. There's a few other players that had like a better round, but he's definitely deserving. Like he's had 3 pretty solid games in a row.
Oh yeah. And the his stats for this game specifically are 20 disposals, 11 contested possessions, 2 contested marks, 6 inside 50s. I believe I believe those two contested marks were out of 4 marks in total. 6 inside 50s,
Yeah.
4 clearances, 3 score involvements, 5 tackles, 19 pressure acts, and 6 ground ball gets.
Solid enough. Solid. Just pretty good. Yeah. So yeah, well deserved of it. And yeah, as I said, I've liked his game ever since he's come into the side. He's a very good player for us, and I can see why there was a bit of hype because he was like one of the first round.
He was a number 9 draft pick.
9, okay,
but was drafted with a minor back stress injury, which is why it's taken a bit of time for him to get on the park.
Why did they draft the back stress injury? Shouldn't they just have taken Roby without it? Does he use extra draft points to draft the back injury?
Yeah, they used extra draft points to get him with the injury.
It's not smart.
No, it's not smart at all. It's the same reason. It's no different to us drafting Taj Horton like after he'd done an ACL, or Josh Smiley with his ongoing issues. Like,
I know
we had to use the extra points for
that. Yeah, exactly. It's why Richmond had to get so many picks.
Yes, exactly right.
That's okay.
All right, let's jump over now to to Darwin, in fact, because the Gold Coast Suns took St Kilda up to Darwin TIO Stadium for the first of a couple of games that they'll play up in the Northern Territory. And with a 29-point margin, the Gold Coast Suns do win out 13-11-89 to 8-12-60.
Yes, and I said it was Darcy Wilson and the Saints weren't enough for Ben King and the Suns because they were the only 2 multiple goal kickers this game, both kicking 4 and having a really big influence in this contest. But apart from that, it was pretty... apart from the Saints jumping out early, it was pretty anemic after that because it was very uncontested, very bruise-free. There was a big lack of tackling. And then this, after the Saints, had some nice forward half intercepts, it really just dried up. Saints were very beaten on the outside contest. They won the inside contest. But again, there's a bit of a theme. Their leading in clearances did not lead to any stoppage goals. Whereas Gold Coast, as normally tend to do in these sort of games, the back half ball movement, when you generate some good ball movement early, catch teams, off the hot, because obviously there's a few more turnovers in games like these. All and Rioli and Noble all led a really good back half barrage with a good long effective kicks needed in a match like this. Greasy conditions can make you obviously short kicking a bit more difficult. So yeah, they just launched a lot of play and it was able to slowly win the Suns the territory when they, sort of cleaned up their act and they just won very academically. I know it's all the joke about, maybe not even joke, but, the Suns in Darwin, pretty unstoppable. But again, it's like very hard conditions to play, and, while I did think like Saints did have a few avenues, they just really weren't, like it wasn't bad. I just think
it was just a really frustrating, weird game. Which is kind of self-standard when it comes to St Kilda. But like in this one specifically, I think Darwin, like the fact that it was played up in Darwin, does make a lot more of a difference than people seem to think.
Yeah, I just think also like I think even without the greasy conditions, I almost think that the Saints were almost a bit too willing to get the ball up. Or at least send it too long. I think Sam Flanders was a very good example of this. Like, there was a lot of time against the old club where it was just like, like there were okay possessions, like they were long, they were what you need, but they were very much, straight to the contest, very wide, didn't really seem to get much meterage after the fact. And yeah, as I said, it was just a bit... and maybe it's like a bit unfair to like blame Flanders because again, it's pretty hard in any these sort of conditions to be able to do that consistently. But it just didn't really lead to much. And yeah, as I said, still alright. 6 score involvements, can't really complain. But as I said, it was just only because it was compared to like Daniel Rioli and Thingo in general, Noble. I think they were both like fantastic with the ball use. Ulam was very good at intercepting as well. Like he was like the really good mixed bag in terms of like applying intercepts and still having really good ball use. But yeah, as I said, Noble and Ulan just seem to Rioli and Noble just seem to hit the correct option 9 times out of 10. Um, Also, Wilkie was hurt. Sort of really, it didn't really hurt a bit because like the tolls didn't do much, but I think like a lack of intercept presence really hurt the Saints defensive group because especially in this game, where a lot of momentum just came off turnovers. Saints couldn't really generate many deep ones as well. They had to rely on their forward half pressure rather than launch from the back half. So yeah, as I said, once the forward half pressure, Saints Suns got got territory, just dried up for the Saints. Also just because it was interesting. Ned Moyle in the ruck battle between TDK and Marshall, he didn't really win the ruck battle. Seemed to, but like TDK and Marshall both seem to come up really short in the little moments. While the big Moyle, I actually think he did some really handy things at times. And in the absence of Wits, he's sort of struggling. It's like maybe you just I just think you'd rest him. Probably the plan anyway, but like there's no real reason you would bring him up to Darwin. He plays a bit too like Moyle's still not the full-time plan. So, you got to play these 2 games out.
Yeah.
You go to wherever your next game is, and just able to have a bit more refreshed wits. Fingers crossed.
They're probably just trying to push him to mid-season, I would gather. But yeah, like
Maybe.
I think their run to mid-season isn't too bad when they're like coming up to like certain ruck contests.
Yeah.
So there's a fair chance that they could just end up resting him. He probably does need a rest. Like that's probably why he's been.
Yeah, he's well cooked. Like I know a few ruckmans have like struggled a bit, and yeah, he's like a sort of body that would, but like he'd normally have a bit more around the ground presence than what he'd been producing earlier on in the season. I just think whatever he might have just been a bit cooked or whatever. But sort of wrapping it up because I don't think there's that much interesting from this game. As I said, you might be a bit critical of the Saints, but it's like it's in Darwin. They're a bit of a flaky team anyway. I just think it's whatever. They had a decent half. They sort of fell off. Is what it is. But the Suns, it's really interesting because they've done really well against some teams, and they've been able to get good intercept numbers, but they have been the teams that have also been on the lesser side in terms of ball usage. So it'll be really interesting to see if they can find like a good ball use team to sort of see if their defense holds up, because I think that was the biggest knock when they were struggling a bit defensively. I think it's just like the lack of intercept generation sort of hurts. They're a very aggressive defense. So when they were struggling in stoppages, preventing to create turnovers, they were really struggling a bit. So, it's whether the like this fortuitous, action against poor ball use teams, where it's them creating, whether it's them just, being the beneficiaries of some pretty poor ball movement, it's yet to be seen. But, regardless of the fact, we'll still have to wait another week because they have Port next. And Port aren't a good ball use team,
No.
as I've probably mentioned before. So, Sun's probably looking to get another win up in Port, which is good because, they have a couple of... it's only really one. The Saints have a couple of little things I'll have to look at coming up till next week in terms of the injury front.
Yeah, so on the injury front, there was one for the Suns with Ethan Reed going out with a knee injury. I don't think it's anything too bad, but he'll probably be out for a couple of weeks. Cal Wilkie, obviously, with his back issue, no guarantee he will play this week against Richmond. And Naz Sinzayo was managed, and it was a late change. I don't entirely know if it was like just general soreness or injury related. But according to Ross's presser, he did say that there is a possibility he may not play this week. So that is currently a remains to be seen situation.
Yeah, it was. And it's a bit of a shame because, I hope he gets patched up. I don't really think there was like a big difference in this game. I guess maybe some of the polish coming from their clearances and all that because, as I said, they really didn't. But like, as I said, I don't think the midfield was bad. We've been a bit critical about like midfields that didn't really link up, but like it's a greasy game. Like those inside midfielders are always going to have a bit lower than you want in terms of disposal efficiency and all that. It's more just, as I said, the fact that they just, again, I think it was more options on the outside rather than their, lack of stoppage thing. It's just a bit of a shame for St Kilda, because I think if it was more a less greasy night, or maybe, a bit cleaner, they might have actually taken the Suns to the sword a bit. As I said, I just don't really think they quite had the it's almost like a decent racing plan, but not quite the tyres to suit the condition, almost.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. All right, let's jump over now to the big Saturday night clash, the game where Scott Pendlebury equaled the total games record against Boomer Harvey, against Geelong, of course, but with a 54-point margin. Geelong loved to spoil the party, finishing 18-14, 122 to 9-14, 68.
Absolutely fun to be had for the milestone player, which isn't exactly true. He was probably near best on ground. His ball use and pre-post clearance work are all very high, and he just was one of the bigger players in that midfield, especially when Oisin Mullen was, I've written here, turned into one of the biggest NACOS haters since the best and fairest panel. Absolutely tagged into oblivion, had less disposals, and his disposals were pretty rubbish. I think he was hitting about 30% by foot or something ridiculous. Anyway, I think it was like 50% overall.
Yeah, he had a horrible
55%.
game, and like a lot of that comes down to Mullen just completely shutting him down.
Yeah, 29 disposals, not many of them good. But I can't really blame him, because, as I said, it was just like a lot of pressure and good work by the Cats. Just couldn't do anything moving the ball up forward, despite a decent amount of turnover ball and stoppage wins. So, theoretically, I don't think, again, structurally, Collingwood were that far off the pace. But it was more just, they needed a few more players to stand up and connect when their big players had a lot of heat on them, and it just didn't happen. Also for the Cats, I think Ollie Henry played one of his better key forward games, which is fun because it's against his old side. I've also written as a bit of note, because I looked it up, him and Jacob Ryan, who I really don't know, he's played one game for the Magpies, are the only two people left in that three-way trade that saw Ollie Henry go to Geelong, Collingwood received Tom Mitchell and a few draft picks.
Yes.
I think also Cooper Stevens. I think he either went to Hawthorn. I think Stevens must have gone to Hawthorn. And then a whole lot of draft picks, which never really eventuated to any long-term players. So it's just, Ollie Henry and Jacob Ryan, which was fun looking back at the match fair, because a few people, mainly Geelong fans. Geelong are the biggest haters of their own team in the modern era.
They really are.
They just
so
don't trust
weird.
I think it's just being so young and so good. All the young fans, they're just not used to losing. It's oh, we lost this regular season game, or we've lost this part of the regular season game, or Geelong, they're only beating a bad side by 10 when we thought we were going to beat them by 100. And it's calm down. You're still going to make the prelim. But, does speak to their success. Magpies did win the inside 50 count, if you'd believe it. But De Go was really the only one that linked up with anyone, and Collingwood just couldn't turn ground level wins into general play scores. Very restricted in the marking, good defensive effort. But as I said, they didn't really have the ground level to pull it off, and everything else was just so sporadic. Jack Buller had a good game. That's pretty much their biggest win of the night. And also, I will say this, people are being a bit harsh on Collingwood. Again, being oh, they're so old and collapsing. But we've been saying it for weeks, they've been putting in efforts to put time and effort into younger players. It's really only because their old players are so old that they're the oldest team in the comp. I know that goes without saying, but
it does go without saying.
They are very skilled. It's only really 2 or 3 positions on the field making up the bulk of the age. Everything else is probably fine. Maybe I would probably argue that the only really wasted team management decision is probably the decision to bring in Dan Houston. Which is, I know that theoretically like it's not been bad or whatever, but like I don't really think he's fit into Geelong's system. And I think Quaynor's always been like a bit, I don't know. Like at times I feel like Quaynor's appreciated. There are times where I don't, but it's like you move Josh Dacos on the back half and he's the player that you run the ball through. And it's like, what does Dan Houston do? He's like, oh, he's defensive. And then he's like a fire starter for a team that doesn't really go fast unless it's an intercept.
Yeah.
But Dan Houston isn't also an interceptor. So it's like, well, how's he going to generate? I just think it's a bit awkward. I feel like maybe if they're like defensive coach and probably had like a different plan, I don't think he would have like gotten Dan Houston in. And not to say he's done bad or should be, whatever, but it's just like, I always found it a bit of an awkward fit. But again, the pain of being Collingwood, you tend to just attract more free agents and you tend to just accept them without really thinking about team fit. So
yep,
is what it is.
The benefits of being a decent of like the big four clubs in Victoria, is
exactly.
You're just going to naturally generate interest essentially. But yeah, like there wasn't really too much to really note from this game. Very convincing win from Geelong. Again, shows why they're a top four side. Collingwood, they're still very much working through a lot of their own issues across the ground. And unfortunately, another one does come in way of a concussion to Darcy Moore. So he will not be playing this week, which honestly, I don't think makes that much of a difference. He's had a very up and down season so far already.
Yeah.
Hopefully though.
It's hard because you say like needs a rest, but I don't think like concussion rest works like that.
Well, he was.
I think most rests require you not having your brains.
He was already out for a minor injury for some of the season anyway, so it's not necessarily like the fact he's getting rest to come back into better form. Like he's been out for a reason. But yeah, like when he has been in, he just isn't in any decent form at the moment, and it's just not great to see your captain in such doubt at the moment.
It's not great, but like I think Collingwood's been okay defensively. Like I wouldn't say it's a worst bit, especially not key defense. But yeah, as I said, Moore has been strangely off, but like I think Maynard just playing really well sort of mitigates that.
Yeah,
I'm not too worried about Geelong's defense overall.
No, and besides, Geelong's offense is just really hard to shut down in the first place.
Yeah. But you can't go through this match without saying the return of the one and only Reece Stanley. 17 hitouts, not many to advantage, but still doing a lot around the ball. Like it's actually one of the higher, like in the player ratings, is in the top 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So yeah, shouts to him. Honestly, didn't think he would be back.
No, maybe but I mean, with with Blitzers out, like you got to bring in some sort of ruck, and I guess Stanley's kind of the only decent option at the moment for them.
Yeah, it was just good to see. It's like, you don't take it personally, you don't get down in the dumps, you just try and do your best. And for this matchup, it turned into a really good game. Obviously, we said before that we think that what's his name, Darcy Cameron, maybe carrying an injury as well, not having his best season, but still take the win where you can.
Yeah, definitely. On the MRO side of things, Lockie Schultz was also fined $1,000 for contact with an umpire, and that brings us to our Sunday games. So, we'll be starting over at Marvel Stadium. Both the games this week were in Victoria. So I'm starting at Marvel Stadium with the Melbourne Demons hosting their one home game of the year at Marvel, as is a requirement for every Victorian club by the AFL. And they hosted the West Coast Eagles.
Obligation.
With a 32-point margin. The Demons did win out 15-9, 99 to 9-13, 67. And I'll be honest, this felt like a much closer game than it probably should have been.
Yeah, I don't know. Like, I watched bits of it, and it was so hard to purely judge. Like, the Eagles were patchy. Like, there's no doubt about it. Like, the Eagles did not have a consistent performance this match. And it was a pretty rank start. Eagles butchered their forward entries as Melbourne responded with just, like, the easier outside movement. that you can get. But, I think the Eagles legitimately fought back. And if, they were a bit more accurate, it was really just a fairly even contest. Melbourne's turnovers were just being converted at a better rate than the Eagles were able to generate.
Mm-hmm.
Despite not losing one of his 5 1-on-1 contests, Gibney couldn't keep Van Rooyen at bay as the speed of the ball coming into the defence and a lack of Edwards, who we'll talk about in a bit because that is a huge bit of injury news, just kept the battler fighting uphill all day. Van Rooyen also had one of the better games. He could have, if it wasn't for the fact that he was nice enough to hand the ball over to, I think, Max Gawn for one of the cheapest goals in the goal square, he would have had a 6-goal game, wouldn't he? What did he have in the end? Yeah.
Yes.
5 goals, 1.
Yes, that is correct.
So, that could have been a 6-bagger. But, as I said, did the good thing. Gave Gorney an easy one because he missed every other shot that wasn't 1 meter from the goal line. Kicked it. Oh, Max Gawn, 38% disposal efficiency. Ooh. So he was just a bit off.
Just a bit off in disposal.
Fantastic game, by the way.
It was still very good around the ground, as it normally is.
Yeah, pretty much. Paddy Cross as well. Sort of that. I don't know. It's sort of that mixed. He's not really a high half forward. He's not really a winger, but he kicked 3 goals, and for a player that I hadn't really paid attention to, he did spark a bit of joy. But as I said, there was a fair decent amount of positives. Starting off with McCarthy at the halfback. Honestly, McCarthy is slowly edging towards the Eagles' best and fairest. I know Reid, who had a fantastic game, battled very hard, maybe even had an ankle knock, but still put in a really solid effort, especially early, because Harley Reid was one of the only performers in that first quarter. But yeah, as I said, McCarthy's been really consistent, really a lot of things to like there. And honestly, I don't think the Eagles' inside midfield did too bad considering the Gawn-Heath ruck advantage. But really, it was just errant kicks exposing their already battered defense. I mentioned the Melbourne turnovers. It's why I really think the first quarter was the only inexcusable bit. And they did sort of fade away late, but, I think that's sort of understandable.
Yeah.
As the first quarter where it was just a pure lack of effort, I think, quarters will have a strong work. But, it's Melbourne get a few turnovers. They've got literally no one that can, defend down there. You just take what you get, I guess. There's a reasonable understanding. And yeah, as I said, also, I forgot to mention, Brady Hoff, although he didn't have the ball much, he was tagging Cozzy Pickett. Kept him to, 13 disposals, one goal? 14 disposals, 1 goal.
Oh, yeah.
Pretty good.
It is pretty solid.
Considering he's been one of the best players.
Yeah, considering we know how lethal Pickett can be, being able to shut him down does make a huge difference to how the Melbourne midfield actually functions, especially when Pickett is a lot of that link up towards the forward line. So which is why it doesn't surprise me all that much that 32 points was the margin and it wasn't bigger. Could you think with the way the Demons have been playing for the past month, you think they would be the kind of team to be able to kick a bag and really, really shut down the Eagles? But the fact that it was only 32
their
points...
offense has been fantastic.
The fact that it was only 32 points and, in terms of conversion for West Coast, that, it could have been 13-9 rather than 9-13 or whatever. And it could have been a lot closer had they taken just that little bit extra advantage of scoring shots. The Eagles, despite the 5-goal margin, look good. I mean, not great, but they look decent enough to where they've been competitive. And, they're still showing some solid performances in some key areas.
Yeah, exactly. It's just one of those things where I think, as I say, it's just about that consistency. It's making sure your best and worst performance doesn't happen as big a swing in games. But, against a team going a pretty decent belt, it's not the worst result. But, there's always things you can improve on. And, it's about getting some of your lesser performers to give a bit more. They're sort of rotating through. Unfortunately, not many of the inclusions had very big games this week, or at least none that I remember. And, you know, as I said, it's about obviously developing that core, and that core they actually have developed this year. Lindsay, fair enough game. Milan Murdoch, again, another decent game. Liam Duggan sort of had to play a bit more accountable. You know, apparently he was running a bit with Fritsch this stage, just you know, just due to the shuffling around. So wasn't really playing as a rebounder, but still managed to get involved. So yeah, no, as I said, overall it's whatever. But as you know, with Melbourne, a lot of it was much the same we've been talking about before. That midfield group just looked so leagues above where it was last year, with a lot less big names. You know, Chandler and Sparrow are both having really, really good years. I know Chandler's a bit more on the outside, Sparrow's a bit more on the inside, but it's a real balance. And you know, as I said, Jack Steele, you know, it's like he was very much not the prettiest possession. This was like a Jack Steele grunt work, but it's stuff he likes doing. So you know, as I said, they're just making it work at the moment.
Yeah, absolutely they are, and they're getting very solid results out of it. On the injury side of things, I'm going to start with a waffle injury to Jamie Cripps.
Yes.
Thankfully, it has been confirmed it's not an ACL. It is only an MCL. But it does mean he'll still be missing a chunk of footy. But it's hoping to be back towards the back end of the season, which means it is not a career ender, hopefully, and that he'll at least be able to still get back on the park, even if this does end up being his last season because of it.
Well, the thing is we'll probably know about halfway during the season, because if he does decide that, you know, it's going to be a bit too much to come from, he'll probably err on making that decision before the mid-season draft. You know, he's 34, so you know it's a bit touch and go, but it would be a sad way for him to go, because you know, I know obviously, you know, there's a few players that just don't get a choice. You know, they get dropped and either just don't come back or pick up an injury like this. But you know, he's been a very, you know, reliable, almost, you know, he's like, what was it, like 3 seasons for the Saints? 2. So, you know, as I said, but a lot of people are just going to remember him for being a long-serving Eagles player. You know, 277 games, only 16 of them for St Kilda. He's pretty much, you know, fan favourite. Unfortunately, I don't think he was ever going to reach 300. But, you know, premiership player, obviously kicked that absolutely fantastic goal against all odds to beat Collingwood. And we hope it isn't the last we see of him, but I honestly think that he might just do a team-based move and open up his spot.
There's a possible
if he doesn't
possibility
think it's
he might do the team-based thing
as much
to give him an option in the mid-season
draft. But, you know, as I said, he definitely deserves to keep it, you know, having another run, because it's like 34 isn't automatically retire age. It's just how his body's feeling.
Yeah, exactly right.
So he'll be the only one that knows.
You look at Gawn, you look at you know, Prestia, you look at Pendlebury and Sidebottom.
You look at Gunston. You know, he's like having a career at 35.
Yeah, exactly.
36, whatever. However,
like we've got the fact that like the quote unquote retirement age of veteran footballers keeps seemingly extending shows, even though, you know, we have issues with the season itself with like the lengths and stuff, and that's why players are probably getting injured a lot more, just because they're wearing out their bodies a lot more. Like the fact that you know, the players are looking after their bodies so much better in terms of like when they're going through their pre-seasons and stuff, and they're able to play out more games and stuff in their careers. I have already that written down, by the way. It's scroll down. It's already there.
Fine. I was being helpful.
I
provided the MRO report.
It's such a good thing to see. And like the fact that like this does not mean like this MCL to Cripps does not mean it's a be all and end all. Like there is entirely a possibility he comes back, and if it all goes to plan, he could potentially still play another season. Who knows? Like there's like such a wide variety.
Like they need veteran presence
for players nowadays. Yeah,
like they're already batting young.
Exactly right.
So it's a wait and see. But yeah, as I was alluding to, I was doing a bit of MRO research, and I can tell you that Cozzy Pickett is off for his not really a bump, maybe arguably a bit clumsy play for the ball. Sort of just ran into a contest, pretty upright, whilst another Eagle was bending over to pick up the ball. So while it wasn't a bump, it was just whether it was a football action and whether it was a considered football action, which he got off of that. Maybe a bit lucky, but I think it's probably fair enough.
Probably a little
I think
bit
it was just
lucky,
like a bit of a to me it felt like a contest misread, but like we've seen them get suspended anyway, so as I said, odds in your favour, but like not the most egregious let off.
Yeah, absolutely.
Fair enough.
On the injury side of things, Caleb Windsor is out with specifically a left big toe injury. Again, I don't know the severity of this, so hopefully he's not out for too long. Daniel Turner with a late change with illness, so Disco will be in likely for this week's game. And the big one for the West Coast Eagles with Harry Edwards going out with concussion after a nasty head clash.
Third this year, so he will be up for the concussion board. He had one in the preseason and one earlier, I think, this year. I think that's what he just... I'm not sure. I don't actually think it's what he came back from. I can't remember. I can't tell you how many games Harry Edwards has played this year. It's somewhere between...
It's
like 3
It's a very
4,
small amount,
I think.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it is a real shame because I do really rate him as a player.
So do I.
It just seems like a bit of bad luck in the family.
I
don't think,
we spoke about him a
was
lot
ever
in the
AFL
last
standard.
season and how much of a difference he was making when he was getting consistent game time. So him being out again does not do this backline any favours.
Yeah, because I said, like, even Luke Edwards had his fair share of injury run. He wasn't really AFL standard like Harry, but, as I said, it's weird how sometimes it can almost run like that. Even though, like, a lot of his injuries, I actually think it was Luke that had more concussions. I think he retired because of the concussions. And then, I think Harry had knee injuries.
No, that's correct.
Last year,
because I remember, I'm
and
pretty sure
he had to be
Luke had to be medically retired because of the concussions. Like the concussion board kind of gave him that sort of direct options.
Yeah,
so if you don't retire because of these, there's gonna be worse medical outcomes or however they kind of explain it. So yeah, I think Harry's the one that's kind of been mostly been like injuries and stuff.
Well, so it's almost pretty hot topic, especially with the Melbourne game, considering I know we probably won't talk about it, but with the whole Zurich thing
we won't go into detail on that. If you want to know all about that whole situation, I recommend going to look at some articles because that is very complicated.
Yeah, but I know they're probably not listening, but I don't want to be sued. We don't make enough money for that. So,
also fair.
Yeah, go look it up yourself.
Right,
yeah. Shall we finish off with a positive enough game, I'd say?
There's about half the game of positivity in this one, let's just say.
Yeah.
Yes, we're going over to the MCG now, where Richmond hosted the Adelaide Crows on the Mother's Day clash. I was there in the crowd watching my boys, and with a 37-point margin and a dreadful second half by us, the Adelaide Crows do win out 14-98 to 9-7-61.
Yeah. And look, it was just a lackluster effort in the first half of the contest for Adelaide. Richmond looked in a position where they would at least look to keep Adelaide honest for the whole of the match. Like, they weren't heading around in a big scoring, but we know where Richmond's forward line is.
Yes.
And the fact of the matter is that they were dominating the ground ball. They caused a lot of turnovers from the back half chains, from Adelaide into the forward half intercepts. So Adelaide transitioning, Richmond turned the ball over, get a few good looks. That was keeping the scoreboard humming, and really, I just felt it's not like it was the usual. No, not usual. So Lynch had a really good game. He was sort of. This almost felt like the most conventionally structured Richmond's forward line has been for a while, but also, I mean, it's still Jonty Fole, McKelty, Lafau sort of getting back into it, all that sort of stuff.
Very impressed with Lafau this week. I think he did had a lot more of a positive impact. Tom Lynch, again, his just his presence in that forward line does make a huge difference. He doesn't have to have that huge impact in terms of score, but the fact that he's just
Yeah.
there taking the number one defender, creating, being the kind of the focal point for packs, which allows like Lafau to even play as a crummer every now and then.
Mm.
Jonty plays a little bit further up the ground to allow Lynch to play deep. Steely Green, still getting getting more comfortable as a crummer, more so than getting like a loose ball. Seth Campbell has
Mm.
been fantastic all season long. Genuinely, he had a
Yeah.
fantastic game this week. That goal off the boundary, oh, chef's kiss. Um,
Yeah.
like our forward line is starting to gel that a little bit more, and I'm very impressed. Granted, the midfield did kind of let us down a bit more especially in that third quarter.
Yeah.
Um, but in
That
terms of
was,
just the
yeah.
game as a whole, I think I'm very happy with how our forward line looked.
Yeah, and that's sort of where I'm going to go for it. Because, like, before that quarter, it was really only Rankin that looked like really clicking. I've seen, like, the Claros were almost playing at, like, half rate of their normal execution. I mentioned Lynch before. However, the third quarter, when we had to talk about it, it was absolutely brutal. Scoreless quarter for Richmond,
Yep.
sparked by Rochelle. They owned 63% of possession, only got tackled twice, and scored almost flawless from intercept. They just ripped them apart. And like, I almost think like the Tigers, at least in the last quarter, there were signs that they were like sort of,
We did
coming back.
start to bring it back a
Um,
little bit, but the blade
yeah,
the damage was already done.
like I think it was like conservative. Is like I think Adelaide was sort of like stalling a bit. And then they got some really junk time goals in a row. I think old teams had sort of given up at that point. Richmond probably not concerned that much about percentage at the moment.
No, I
So,
don't think they
as I
are.
said, given how bad they were before halftime and how strong their third quarter was, I'm almost like at liberty to forgive them. But yeah, that third quarter was pretty bad. There's no real two ways about it. Caught on the hop or regardless, it was just yeah, a very big lack of pressure for a quarter of football.
Yeah, it wasn't a great look. I think even though we did have like some very positive signs in like just in that midfield core and even just around the ground as a whole, like
Mm.
the lack of effort in that third quarter like was really disappointing to see after playing such a good first half. Like Jack Ross looked great. Taranto looked great coming back in. Hopper, even though
Mm.
we had zero confidence with him brute to
Yeah.
ball. Um, I think the stuff he was doing around the ground was otherwise all right. Kane McAuliffe, at
Maybe.
least for that first half, was solid. We know he's kind of carrying an Achilles
Yeah.
injury, but because of the fact that we don't exactly have personnel to come in to cover, he's kind of just having to fight through it for the moment. Um, there's
I, yeah.
and then it's just
I think it was
there's
almost
bits
like
and
it for
pieces as
Richmond.
well.
Like, to their credit, I think considering how our class they were at the outside, I think they in waves did a good job of stopping the outside. But yeah, as I said, like it really felt like Cunningham and McAuliffe was sort of just playing off the back foot. When as I said, obviously the inside midfield, but when Berry, not Berry, what's the outside version of Berry? Cook started
Yes.
getting into this game. Two really good games in a row too. Dan Curtin got very involved. It's good to see him back from injury. As I said, and Toby Murray as well. Honestly, Adelaide playing some whatever you call them, like Toby Murray playing forward, and it's like, oh well, they've got enough toll stocks and whatever, and then they play Nick Murray forward. They went double Murray, and I don't know if it worked. Murray kicked a goal. I guess.
I wanna
I guess I didn't really need him in the back line, but like, it's weird.
I do want to specifically, in terms of the Crows, I want to shout out McAndrew. He had a fantastic game against
Oh
Bolter.
yeah,
He managed to kick like his first goal as a footballer, which
yeah.
is fantastic for him. On Richmond side of things, I'm very impressed with Jack Ross, not just because of the way he's been playing the past couple, like over the past month. I think he's had a very solid season so far, but the fact that he kept Ben Keys quiet. I didn't even know Ben Keys was even playing until the fourth quarter. Like that's how much
Oh yeah.
that's how well Keys was shut down, and why players like Rochelle had to start standing up in that second half.
Yeah, I still think Pidgeot did Pidgeot things. Like, didn't he get like a couple of cheapies? He only got one cheapie, so he's just forced to distribute. Still 5 score involvements. Like, not a bad game, but like you're definitely preventing him from getting the
Rankin,
chippies.
I think Rankin and
As
Miller
Ben Keys
were
loves to.
probably the two most, apart from like Dawson in the second half as well. I think Rankin
Yeah,
and Miller are kind of the two that very much stood up in the first half. And
oh
then
yeah,
obviously that started changing more and more as that second half kind of went through.
yeah. I think Miller was just one of those players that, as I said, he's really been solid this whole entire year. As I said, it's so weird because, when Adelaide's back half transition has been like really terrible, it's like it feels bad because it's like, oh, is it because he's playing well that Adelaide's, back half is going to crap? But like, I do think it's like mostly the changes to the outside game. Like they've taken a while to get going.
I agree.
Cook, I think improving, has started to improve it. Sam Berry's gone from outside to inside. So, they're sticking tall. And hopefully Curtin getting a few more games. We'll return that. And then obviously Archie, which is a bit more after bye round, isn't it? I
Yeah, I
think it's
believe
still
so.
got a couple of weeks left.
It was also
So
really good to see
yeah,
Neil Bullen have a fantastic game. Kicked, I think, 2 goals. Had solid impact. James Peatling also had a fairly solid game as well. So, it's very good to see a lot of all-round performances for the Crows. In terms
it's
of
just
us, it's there's a lot. It's mostly that first half I'm impressed with, but that second half, yeah, I don't know. I
yeah.
can't really comment too much on it because there's not much to comment on.
I mean, they were just a young team that got absolutely spanked for a period of time, and it wasn't pretty. Um, yeah, it was just like I was upset because I had like a little optimism, and I wasn't gonna do anything else. I can't remember what I was doing. It wasn't much. But yeah, then it was just like, oh, yeah, okay.
And like Tom Brown going out in the first 4 minutes with a forearm injury, did not do us any
Oh yeah, that was just
favors.
unlucky. Yeah.
Which honestly, silver linings. I'm kind of glad that Sam Grill went out with a late change on being managed, because it means that he'll be able to just come straight in,
Yeah.
and we'll keep Luke Trainer in, who was the late
Yeah, he's
change,
solid enough.
who was the late
Yeah.
change for Grill, because Trainer's a
And
defender.
apparently playing on renowned forward Nick Murray.
Yes, very true. Yeah, so Train will take over
Uh,
Brown's position. Grill will come back into the midfield, and like that's all the changes we probably need to make going up against St Kilda this week. So thankfully, it's not too much.
yeah.
Um, but yeah, like our injury list going up to 18 players doesn't
Hmm.
doesn't look good, and we're
Yeah.
very much gonna. A lot of these injuries are short term now, so we will get players back around mid season, which is good. But I think we very much got an eye on that mid season draft at the moment as well.
Yeah, as I said, like it always puts things back into perspective, but it's just like, like again, when push comes to shove, like it doesn't take the best player in the league to tackle, you know what I mean? Like it doesn't take um y- well, I mean obviously better players are better at tackling, but it's just a lack of pressure versus like poor execution are two different things.
Yeah,
And if it was just poor executions, we would forgive the Tigers a lot more. But as I said, on the flip side, it was only one quarter. We've seen teams do it. So and yeah, as the Tigers are near bottom of the ladder.
I do want to also
You
just
just expect that sometimes.
praise Noah Bolter just that little bit more, because
Oh yeah.
apart from, I think he was easily our second best person on field. Not just for like the fact that he has been able to do some really solid ruck work and take advantage of the new ruck rules, because it suits the fact that he can leap and has a great leap at it too. But his work around the ground, his intercept marks were fantastic. And being able to create one-on-one contests and win them was fantastic. Most of his kicks were fairly accurate, even if I guess the player on the receiving end may have fumbled or didn't take it too cleanly.
Mm.
That's always kind of remains to be seen kind of thing. Um, I genuinely think that this change to him being in the ruck has elevated him once again from being like just proving why he's such a good swingman. And
Yeah, 'cause I
it
think
does
it's
put
pretty
into
good
perspective as
in and
well,
around the
like,
contest.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
It does also put into perspective, like, what do we do with Nankervis when he comes back in? Because we've already kind of established this early on in the season that the new ruck rules don't fit his style of play because he's more of a big-bodied, like a big-bodied push and shove kind of ruck, rather
Yeah.
than a leaping ruck. So it's very interesting to see how that dynamic will change going into the later half of the season.
I think we've seen teams play starting to cotton on to the fact that, playing a ruckman for half the game isn't that bad. As I said, I can't remember which teams did this.
Well, we've got
Where are the games
we've
this
got
week?
Melbourne with Gorn and Heath.
Yeah,
We've
Gone
got
and
the
Heath,
Suns with Moyle
Hawks
and
with
Wits. We've got Hawthorn doing it with Meek and
yeah,
the other player.
Meek and Reeves.
Yes, thank you, Ned Reeves. Um,
Wow, poor Reeves.
so yeah, there's a ton of teams who have cottoned on to the fact that two rucks right now isn't that bad of
Yeah,
an idea. I just don't know if we would go with Nank and Ollie Hayes Brown or would go Nank
yeah.
and Bolter.
Oh yeah, even St Kilda or Europe this week are like
Yes.
Marshall TDK. So um, yeah, it's what it is. But I think they got to bring back just that big body.
Yeah.
You can't deny that McAndrews just was able to do what he wanted around the ground.
He did have
Which I
very solid
think
performance.
Nankervis would prevent a bit better.
I agree. I think that might just be a little bit more of like an experience thing when it comes to the ruck kind of position. But yeah, on the injury side of things, Tom Brown out with a forearm injury very early in the game. I don't know how long he will be out for. I'm hoping it's only like a short to medium term injury. I'm praying. And then Sam Girl was managed in a late change, but he'll likely be back in this week. And then on the MRO side of things, Jacob Hopper fined $1,000 for attempting to trip Wayne Miller, and Kane McCullough fined $1,000 for contact with an umpire. And I'm also back on hating Josh Rochelle after he dove for the ball in the fourth quarter, purposely got hit in the head, which resulted in a free kick and a goal. I'm very surprised it didn't come under staging, purely for the fact that it was a very deliberate act that is exactly what he was looking to do to get the free kick out. But like it was just
a bit surprised Levi didn't also get a bit of that. I mean, I know he got done for instigating the melee, but like his was pretty bad too.
Yeah, I agree.
I remember the Port St Kilda game. It was like, yeah, players were like having to head down, but like that was more a bad approach to the contest, where again, like you're doing that sort of action and then the head down, then the flick back. It's not the greatest look.
I get that players are going to very purposely put themselves in positions to take advantage of playing for free kicks. Because they know the rules, they know how to play around the rules and play in sort of that grey area where they can kind of get away with it.
Like putting your head down and going into a contest, like while it isn't great, like the AFL needs to like stamp that out, and like that's been the unfortunate thing with some of these hard decisions. They at least have the agency to do that, but like literally doing that and trying to trick the umpire is just like full on. It's like it's making their job harder because as I said, it's sort of that liberty is like for their protection. You want the umpires to be able to adjudicate as plainly as possible, like right or wrong decision. You want what they see to be what they judge. Whereas when you get players exaggerating these sort of contexts, and even like the head lashbacks, it's like, yeah, sometimes players do just, they get a bit surprised, get a bit more whiplash than they think, jerk back a bit more. But yeah, as I said, when it's so obvious like that, I said I'm not exactly sure which one you're talking about with Rochelle, but he has done that before.
Oh yeah,
I do think Levi was pretty bad.
Yeah, it's just the fact that like the players are willing to risk like potential concussions and stuff like that by purposely putting themselves in harm's way is not on. Like, it just feeds into this.
It's not a smart decision before
issue.
The fact, and it's not a good decision that leads to better decisions down the line. As I said, Yeah, but we sort of see
that
Jack
that and
Ginnivan
Rochelle is
get
also
it out of
just
his game.
is just egotistical. But that's besides the point.
I mean, all football players are egotistical to some
Oh,
degree. Like,
don't have to
yeah.
don't have to look as far
It's
as
one of
Nick
those things you always hate
Dacos.
it until it's your team.
Yeah,
Nick Dacos isn't as egotistical.
I think he
I would say
is.
like the media's more. Nah, the media's more. I actually reckon Nick's a bit more downbeat. I reckon in that team, like maybe I don't know. Maynard's like a weirdly different egotistical. I think there's like that hot-blooded egotistical. He's like we've all had that one. Like the sort of person that like takes school sports a bit too seriously.
Mm.
Like what? Like he'll line up someone who's like a yeah, like he's like gym class is only doing it just because like they're forced to. He'll line up the snot noses.
Oh yeah.
Maybe this is a very unsubstantiated claim. Maynard, I hope you don't do that. And I don't know. It's sort of the vibe.
He's either
I don't know.
he's always just gonna kind of be the go-to for talking about stuff like that. Let's be
Yeah.
honest. All right.
I don't know. I don't really. Yeah.
Let's check out the ladder before Sir Doug Nicholls Round takes off. So, starting with the number one position, being the Sydney Swans, sitting first on 32 points, 157.2 percentage. While Yallop, also known as Fremantle, also 32 points, sitting second, 131.6. Hawthorn on third, 26 points on 116.8 percentage. The Brisbane Lions, 24 points, 124.5 percentage. Geelong in fifth place, also on 24, 120.4 percentage. And the Gold Coast Suns rounding out the top six, also on 24 at 118.5 percentage. Going down into seventh position, we've got Nam, also known as the Melbourne Demons, 24 points, 103.9 percentage. Kuana, also known as the Adelaide Crows, 20 points, 101.7 percentage. The Western Bulldogs, also on 20 points at 92.4 percentage, and Collingwood rounding out the top 10, 18 points on 99.9 percentage. What a nice round number for them.
Yeah, almost perfectly even. 4 wins, 4 losses, 1 draw. As I was saying, probably the most even 9 game team will get.
At this point in time, I'd say so.
You don't normally get a 4.5 win team just because of draws, and then to have almost 100% in percentage. Points for 734, points against 735.
That is pretty good. It is extremely even, which is so weird. All right. 11th position, Uric, also known as St Kilda. 16 points, 109.3 percentage. North Melbourne in 12th, 16 points, 104.4 percentage. GWS, 16 points as well, 91.1 percentage. On 14th is Yartapulti, also known as Port Adelaide. 12 points, 109.5 percentage. In 15th is Wallich Marawa, also known as the West Coast Eagles. 8 points, 60.1 percentage. And then rounding out the bottom 3 is Carlton, with 4 points, 79.3 percentage. Essendon, 4 points, 71.8 percentage. And Richmond, 4 points, 60.3 percentage.
And that is a very nice rundown. And as I want to point out, I think your first time reading the Indigenous names, normally I've been the go-to for that just because I pick them up a bit quicker. But yeah, it's always hard because you want to be respectful and you don't want to like mispronounce them. But when you do learn, it's good to let it roll off the tongue.
Yeah, and honestly, I don't think that they're all that difficult to say. It just...
No, I think Uric and Wallich Marawa are just like the hardest to figure out how you're meant to approach it. So
yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
Let's jump over now to round 10, also known as our first of 2 Sir Doug Nicholls rounds, starting with a big Thursday night clash up at the Gabba, where the Brisbane Lions will host Geelong.
Yeah, and honestly, this is going to be a big one because, as I said, 2 teams that probably, not really started slow. Like Geelong got smacked in the first round, then just like reasonable losses. Brisbane obviously starting to really hit on their strides. But yeah, as I said, 2 offensively based teams, but in very different ways. Brisbane dominating the inside midfield, getting that forward half press on. Geelong run and carry, moving off the halfback, forcing turnovers. You know, oh, actually, that's a surprise. I always look at the stats a tiny bit. Don't normally bring them up. Geelong have more points from stoppage this year than Brisbane, which is surprising. Oh, sorry, no, that's points against. That doesn't make sense.
That
Okay,
doesn't make
yeah,
sense
yeah,
at all.
yeah. I was gonna say, it's like, how would, yeah, nah. So, yeah, so it's the biggest question is like, how did Geelong keep Brisbane's inside midfield accountable? Because, outside running, I think, you can sort of limit the impact of Levi Ashcroft and, some of the others. What's his name? The really good one that everyone wants to throw money at.
Bailey?
Yeah, Zach Bailey, thank you very much. So, yeah, that'll be good. But, as I said, Brisbane, though, yeah, like, a bit shaky to start with their defense, and as I said, I guess maybe I didn't realize mention it as much. Like the back half against the Blue was a bit shaky, but like Ryan Lester, he is having a career year. As much as I joke about Froggy, I do love him, but he is probably heading towards career statistics. So it's about those sort of moments.
Yeah, this
I
is
guess just in general, you have to go to the Gabba. Again, and especially when it's going to be a moment's game, like both teams, they're not the greatest defenses. Like, I'd pick other clubs over them, but they can just score without issue. So when that tends to happen, it's the moments that separate them. And yeah, Brisbane at the Gabba, you just got to probably back them in, starting to get a bit greasy up there before the winter time. So,
yeah, well,
probably a good time of the year for them.
well, this is the grand final rematch, so it's going to be very interesting to see exactly how these teams kind of line up, because obviously we all know, no, there's never an opportunity where a grand final team will be the same the year after. It still hasn't happened.
Yeah.
In the many years, like kind of since the whole kind of theory of it all started. I think purely for as a safety tip, you would go Brisbane. Again, the Gabba does make a huge difference in that regard. But Geelong know how to play up there. They know how to play fantastically well up there, and especially against Brisbane.
Yeah.
But I think just in terms of comfort, I would say you'd probably just kind of lean towards Brisbane unless there's a massive change in like an ins and outs sort of thing.
Yeah, which I don't think there was anything in this week to indicate that there would be. So
not off the top of my head.
Yeah. So yeah, as I said, pretty straightforward, but yeah, pretty good game. Just sit down and watch, enjoy. As I said, grand final rematch. That'll be good. It has been weirdly lopsided, where it went very back and forth last year. It was like win loss, but like Geelong obviously dominated them in the qualifier, only to get absolutely smacked in the grand final.
Yeah.
So, well, at least in the last half. So
yes.
Yeah, who knows? But I think it will be relatively close in the regular season.
Yeah, I think so. All right, jumping over now to our Friday night games, starting off at the SCG, where the Swans will host Collingwood.
Yeah, so I don't know. It's going to be really hard because, yeah, Collingwood, yeah, their transition hasn't been really that great this year, and Sydney are very good at stopping that. And their attack has been really, really solid. And yeah, so Collingwood just, yeah, away, it doesn't really seem like it, And obviously, we're expecting the omission of one Scott Pendlebury.
Yes.
To be fair, I don't think he would have travelled anyway. But as I said, you still take out a bit of experience in that side as well. I don't know. It seems like an issue that maybe Kane Corns would have an issue with, but I don't know. I think old man Pendles probably put him on ice. Probably fair.
Yeah, I wouldn't expect. I think Sidebottom is already out as well anyway, so having both the veterans out for this game, I don't think that'll make too much of a difference. Purely for the fact that it is Sydney. And they are just, again, they're the best team in the comp right now, so I don't expect anything less than winning fairly convincingly.
Yeah, because they coughed up a few clearances to Geelong, who, are just middle of the table in terms of that. where, as I said, Sydney are just so dangerous. You got your Isaac Heaney's that just come up and score and all that sort of stuff. Dacos will most likely without other experience around him, just get the Dacos on Dacos tag.
Yeah.
He would never see it. No, they'll bring in a third Dacos. He'll just be unmasked. No, James Jordan.
Is it like is it like all of the Dersma brothers just all of a sudden convening into one game?
Exactly. They just sort of merge like Ultratron. But yeah. Sydney will win.
Yeah,
100%. I guess.
I mean, not 100%, but more likely than not.
Yeah, exactly.
All right.
All right.
Now back up to Darwin, where the Gold Coast Suns.
You want to jump in before I could say down to Darwin, didn't you?
Yes, because we're going up. We're not going down. Up to Darwin for a. I do love the fact that the Suns host Darwin games, especially during Sir Doug Nicholls Round, because it's such a good thing for the Indigenous communities. But they will be hosting Yatapuka.
Oh, they love it down there. Honestly, some of the best vibes, some of the best post-game vibes, it's really the Indigenous players. They are so good at, just chilling, win or loss, just chilling, signing. They know there's not too many opportunities.
And when Richmond and Essendon did Dreamtime in Darwin during the pandemic, I think that's probably some of the most fun I have ever seen out of a football game.
I don't think Rioli left the venue until one.
No, I don't think so either.
Rioli Jr., I think, at the time. But yeah, he was just signing.
I mean, both Morris and Daniel were up there, so I would assume that they were both just having a whale of a time.
Maybe they both were. I can't quite remember the timeline, but anyway, in terms of this game, it's interesting. Obviously, Gold Coast at the TIOs, they just win there a lot. And as I said, never Matt played at this venue before. And the other side of it, though, Port undefeated. Oh, sorry, not undefeated. Only 2 losses in the Gold Coast history. One of them coming from last year. And last year, 2 years ago. Obviously, last year was that very unlikely win against, in that last round. So, if you're going to pull out history, it's a very mixed bag. But, as I said, in the greasy conditions, where ball use is a bit of a premium, Port probably don't have as many penetrating back half users as they did back when they last played a few times in Darwin. Because I think they've been fairly successful in the Northern Territory. They had Melbourne there for a while and were fairly decent. I think they played a few more games at, Alice Springs, more so than TIO. So as I said, it'll be tough. I think most likely it'll be a close-ish game, but Gold Coast will probably just win a bit off turnover score. But if Port can keep it tidy, they can defend all right. They stop transition fairly well. They just got to keep the middle a bit disciplined, and they've got a shot.
Yeah, I think so.
Unlikely. I think it's where, in my, scheme of tipping, where Port, as long as they're not a massive disadvantage, I'll still probably go for them. And I think this is one where I'll still probably tip Port and just cry when they lose by 2 points after a last goal kick on the siren by the Suns, as is seeming to happen these days.
No, whereas on my end, I think same as last week, I think Darwin does play a little bit more of a factor than it does if it's just played on the Gold Coast. So I think the Suns have a much clearer advantage. Again, the Suns are also just better, mostly structurally and personnel. It's more so personnel.
Personnel, definitely.
By comfort, you would back the Suns in this one. I think it's very brave for you to go Port Adelaide in this one specifically. But I
don't think there's that much difference.
There's definitely avenues.
As I said, I don't think the Suns are quite on stride hitting straps. They've got the capacity for it. But at this point, I wouldn't call Gold Coast a finals threat from what we've just seen so
No,
far.
yeah, I wouldn't either. But they're still in
No,
that like
but yeah, it's like a third of the season, and like
they're still in
the
like the
most
upper
important part
echelon of
is
teams, but they're
yeah,
still not exactly where you expect them to be.
yeah, maybe yeah.
Something
As
like
I
that.
said, it's just yeah, something like that. All right. Shall we move on to the Adelaide Oval on Saturday?
Yes, Kawana hosting North Melbourne at the Adelaide Oval. And after what we've seen from North, especially last week, but even just over the past couple of weeks, I definitely think that they could take the Crows to the sword because I think this will be a lot more interesting of a
Yeah,
game than like the numbers may kind of tell.
well, the thing is, it's just like, yeah, as I mentioned, like the Crows' inside midfielders, they've just been okay. I think the outside sort of being the one difference between this year and last year. I think the inside production is probably similar-ish, but it's still not like a massive boon to them. But we've often seen like, North being outscored, but like still scoring well in this contest head to head. So it's going to be interesting to see if like the small defensive improvements might bring them a bit closer to the ledger. And I honestly think just by the matchup, there's like a tiny upset chance. But you're still backing Adelaide in
Oh
Adelaide.
yeah,
It's a
actually,
bit,
100%. Plus, you also
unless you're
have to
searching for a tip.
really hope that Larky and Curtis don't get shut down like they did against Melbourne. Not Melbourne.
Yeah, and
Whoever they
like
were playing.
Adelaide's defense is like good. It's really just like the back half movement, and they've been coughing up a few back half turnovers. I think structurally they're like pretty fine at the moment in terms of their core defenders.
Yeah, exactly
And
right.
yeah, as I said, it might still have to cause North to be accountable. But as I said, it's just one of those games where I think Adelaide turns this into a run and gun sort of game because it's like I think they've been a bit frustrated too. Or maybe they do clamp it down. I don't know. Maybe they're like, oh well, maybe our forwards aren't back. Depends, I guess, if they get Fogarty back, which I have no idea how long he's out for or
Yeah, I'm
whatever.
not
But
entirely
like,
certain on that either.
um, I can check it now. He'll be back if they want him to be. If they don't want to persist with Nick Murray. So yeah. Um, yeah, it's just, yeah, as I said, maybe they play a bit more conservatively. Maybe they win off defense instead of letting North. But again, that's a dangerous game to play when you're probably losing the clearance battle more often than not. And you can't let players like LDU and, maybe Wardlaw get off the chain. You got to keep Dylan Stevens honest because he is providing as much offensive prowess as someone like a Braden Cook is
Hmm.
for Adelaide, if not more at the moment, which is insane to say. As I said, I'm going to keep on praising Stevens because, as I said, I gave him so much crap last year,
Oh yeah,
and it's
but
good to see. So,
he's stepped up massively,
yeah,
which is good.
I do feel like there's a small upset that's possibly brewing, but I also just don't have that much faith in North in general.
Out of all of the games this week, this is probably the one that would be like the more likely of an upset.
Mm,
Like I definitely think
yeah. It's
there are
also the next one that's
opportunities.
very interesting.
Yeah, there's definitely some
Mm.
opportunities for some of these other games, but I think that one is like probably if an upset is going to happen, it's more likely this one. I would say.
Yeah, exactly.
All right.
Shall we head off to Melbourne and Hawthorn
Yes,
at the
let's
MCG,
head
back home
over
where they want to be?
MCG. Huge clash with Nam and Hawthorn. Like
Hmm.
this is going to be such a fun game, honestly. Like both teams are in very similar positions, both in terms of personnel, both in terms of structure, both in terms
Mm.
of performance. So I think this is going to be like, not like a make or break kind of game, but it's still very early in the season. But it'll
Mm.
definitely tell us where both of these teams are currently sitting.
Yeah, it was a dual head-out match last year, and it was pretty similar. In fact, there was only one difference between the score, 56 to 92 versus 56 to 91 in the two games in favour of Hawthorn both times. So, got over them recently, or at least just for those two matches. And yeah, I think the really interesting thing is like we alluded it to the midfield battle. Melbourne are generating so much from their inside midfield. getting a lot of score off them, which is harder to defend. It's Hawthorn obviously like to be a bit set up. They're not. They're not protecting their defense by any means. Like, they're fine, but if you are going to score off them, points from stoppage is going to be the way to do it.
Yeah.
But at the same time, Melbourne hasn't really been defending overly too much. They've been letting teams run with them. So it's going to be like, how will Melbourne put on enough pressure to Hawthorn to prevent scoring momentum? In which case, I do think they will win. And in fact, I might even tip Melbourne. I don't know. I got a feeling about this game. It might be silly, but
Yeah, I have a weird feeling about
ins and
this one
outs
as well. It's going to be very interesting to see.
Yeah. But at the same time, I do think like the general overall balance of Hawthorn, might get them through it. Again, coming from the back half too, it's, something that Melbourne just, as I said, they haven't really had much defensive grit about them. Like, their good wins have been good, but like they've also let the opposition score enough. So I do think they're going to have to play a bit better than normal defensively, but I do think it's possible. And yeah, as I said, it's going to be a really interesting one because it'll raise questions for Hawthorn if they lose, and it'll give Melbourne, like, it'll pretty much just erase the Essendon loss if they win. But as I said, it may be a team that I've tipped so safely. I think I'll just tip Melbourne. I feel very boring with my tips recently.
That's very fair. Time to
It's
shake it
been
up
working.
Oh yeah,
Yeah,
no,
it's
like
hard because it's
so
been
far,
working.
so far this season, going the safe route has actually been the correct call for the
Yeah,
most part.
it's dreadful. I hate it when boring tips win. I always like, yeah. But on the same time, I like to invent more form than what's actually there,
yeah.
and that might be the case of what I'm doing this week. But still going to back in Melbourne, maybe.
Yeah, no, I'm kind of I'm kind of in agreement with you. I think mine will mostly depend on maybe ins and outs. Especially if like Disco comes back in. That might make a bigger difference in terms of Melbourne's defense. For Hawthorn, if Scrimshaw comes back in, I would assume he does. That could make a bigger
Yeah, it would be
impact
straight
for
swap with Barras if he's out.
yeah, for Hawks defense. If there's a rumor that Gunston may not be playing, so that could make a difference as well. But yeah, I think that one would be like an ins and outs kind of wait and see. But jumping over now to Marvel Stadium, where Carlton will be hosting the Western Bulldogs, and without Tim English out there once again, does that make a huge difference against Carlton, or do you think that the Dogs will kind of still just win around the ground?
I think like Carlton's best work is stoppages, and Bulldogs sort of like they haven't been scoring as much from stoppages, but like I also don't think that's been terribly bad at the same time. But as I said, I think it's just like Carlton's biggest strength is already sort of matched up by the Bulldogs. And honestly, Bulldogs have arguably been defending better than Carlton this year, which is pretty crazy to think about when we're talking about, these two teams at the start of the year, one having almost consistent All-Australian Jacob Wiedering, and the other one having Rory Lobb taking a nap. So, it's
true.
Yeah, it's very interesting. But yeah, as I said, like Bulldogs, like it's weird because like these two teams would have had similar flaws last year, but the Bulldogs have just shown improvement in like back half movement and all that sort of stuff. And as I said, the fact that they showed it over the last 2 weeks means I'm going to back them in, even with the English loss, to say, they've recalibrated a bit. And I'm going to back in their faith. And as for Carlton, it's like, yeah, they've shown some signs, but like, it's possible, but like, ew.
It's very slim.
Ew.
Like you want to hope that Carlton show some sort of positive signs. Like they showed a little bit last week.
This is a Saturday match? Ew.
Yeah, it's not great.
Can we just switch Nam and Hawthorn versus Carlton Western Bulldogs? Please?
Yeah, I'd be down to swap that.
Yeah.
But yes, jumping
Sorry,
in,
Carlton fans.
it's just how it is. Let's be real. But let's
Yeah.
jump over now to our Sunday games. Back at the MCG, in fact, where the Bombers will host Wallyalup.
Yeah, Up definitely have a pretty solid advantage. I think it's pretty hard when you've got, even though they're not all firing, like four very big solid options, and Essendon, who have not got key defenders, like it's very hard to think that Essendon will just not concede 100 points. So it's all about how they, sort of battle, get the ball forward and all that. It's just, yeah, like this could be ugly, to be honest. I know Essendon have been improved, and I don't think this is all going to be their fault, but it's just not a good matchup. Like
No,
one of the
it's not.
lowest halfback teams against a team that doesn't really stop halfback play. Like Fremantle could just have the ball live, take it up, find good forward matchups, and just win. Unless they really get it out the middle, link up way better than expected in the forward line. I think conversion will be like the biggest, keeping Essendon somewhat in it. But yeah, I think um, Wallyalup will will win strongly, to say the very least.
Yeah, I would very much like to think that it'll be a very convincing win. From the Dockers. For Essendon, I just hope that they don't. It's not necessarily Freo winning off of like Essendon mistakes. I want Wallyalup to kind of
Yeah.
win on their own sort of merit. And I kind of want the Bombers to still have a decent game and just, get some solid experience and some decent positivity again out of their young kids and continue that sort of development that they're currently on. Because
Yeah, exactly.
yeah, otherwise,
It's
you imagine this to be a thumping.
there's only
That's kind of
so
the
much you
basis
can
of it.
expect.
But yeah,
Yeah.
that's just probably how it's
Saying
going to be.
that, any given Sunday, Essendon could win for all I know. I mean, we could look back on this a lot, but on paper, there would be so contrarian to say that Essendon even have half a chance in this matchup. There's just other top teams that they would be better suited for.
Yeah.
I mean, heck, I would even say someone like Hawthorn or something like that, they could almost feasibly could make an argument for, I
Yeah,
guess.
no, I completely agree. For teams that are probably a lot closer of a matchup, you can make an argument for it. But in terms of just how the Dolphins are
Yeah.
currently playing, when you're coming up
Yeah, and
against
their
a team like
style is
Essendon that are
just
not
nah.
in a great position, you expect it to just kind of be a steamroll.
Yeah. All right. Now talking about something that it's very hard to pinpoint because both these teams can play down to each other's level. There's no denying that.
Yes.
We're talking about Uric and Richmond.
Yes, I will be at this game with my best friend. I will also be going to a gig straight after. So I'm going to have a very busy Sunday because I'm also working that morning as well. So it's going to be a very busy Sunday. But yes, I
Might
will
be
be at
another
this
late
game.
recording.
And honestly, if we weren't injured to all hell, this would be a much closer game. I can guarantee it. But because we have so many on the injury list right now, and the boys that are currently out there are just doing their best, I definitely think that the Saints will have a more should have a convincing win here. By far and away, it should be a convincing win.
I think realistically, Richmond, their sole focus is. I don't think you can really start with the way Richmond set up St Kilda's outside play, but I think it's forcing the outside play into being more rushed.
Yeah.
I want to see good forward half pressure, because again, we've often seen Saints, boot away the ball fairly easily and just, hope to win it on the ground level as much as winning it on the air.
Mm-hmm.
But as I said, I would much rather Richmond's chances on the ground than aerially. In this matchup,
there's definitely avenues of us to make it a close game.
Yeah,
but I can very much just see Uric kind of, it should be a convincing win.
Yeah.
But I think there's
Oh,
definitely ways for us to
like,
kind of
yeah,
manage it to be
yeah,
a closer game.
it really depends on the star. As I said, like once St Kilda gets the uncontested, I think it will roll out
Oh yeah.
to a bigger Euro-Europe win. But at the same time, as I said, we've had some pretty ugly St Kilda Richmond games in our history. Like St Kilda
Oh
love
yes.
a good, like a 6-15 to 7-12 battle. Yeah, as I said, they are the most ugliest team when they put their mind to it, despite changes to their structure, theoretically promoting offense. But yeah, as I said, as you mentioned, it'll be interesting, whether the Marshall TDK battle gets a bit more solid because of the lack of opponent. As you said, that Nankervis might not be in this
No,
week.
Nank won't be back until probably
Yeah,
mid-season. From what I
yeah, I
remember
thought
off of the
so.
injury list, he still has at least 2 or 3 more weeks. Um,
Hmm.
but I think Bolter and Ollie Hayes Brown are actually putting in some decent work in terms of a ruck duo, even if it is a temporary ruck duo.
Yeah.
And I think they will probably match up pretty well to the Marshall TDK lineup.
Hmm.
But it'll just be
Oh,
about
I mean,
like
Ned Moyle showed that it only takes, moments and sensibility, doing enough of your role, and then you sort of limit it. Again, it was very greasy. I wouldn't expect
this
them
is true.
to struggle as much contestedly. But as I said, you do your role, you get a bit more benefit. So, yeah. But I mean, yeah, you're tipping St Kilda here,
Yes,
and
absolutely.
not confidently, but
The,
relatively
I want
safely.
there is an opportunity to cause an upset if St Kilda do St Kilda
Yeah.
things and just be very inconsistent. But yeah, it's
Hmm.
purely just off of the safety of it all. You would go the Saints if you're tipping. But we'll now jump over to our last Sunday game with Wollich Moroa at Optus Stadium hosting the GWS Giants.
I mean, it's not out the question.
No, it's not.
I think the Eagles have been patchy. GWS, I mean, you say it's away from home, but GWS are a fairly traveling team. Like they've won enough away to not be too concerned. Um, in fact, the last time that the Eagles beat the Giants was that sort of the first is I must have lost that spurred the Kingsley era, really. You remember when they went to the was it the prelim final after losing their first 4 games? They got into like the elims and made it. I think it was shared with Carlton as well, and they both sort of went from there. Anyway, this is going back a long time
Maybe
ago.
was
Yeah,
this
uh,
was this in the 2020s or was it before that? It was
2023.
Yes, no, I do remember because the Giants played St Kilda and they beat them on
Hmm.
the MCG.
Yeah. But like we all thought the Giants were rabble, and they were like, "Nah, we're actually good."
Yeah, I
We just
remember.
lost to West Coast as a joke. I don't know. Will they lose as a joke again? It is only time to tell. Like statistically across the board, like the Giants have just like got this, but
on
like the
on
Giants don't
paper,
work statistically as
on paper, the
well.
Giants
You know what I
should
mean?
convincingly win this, but yeah, like there's an
Yeah,
opportunity here for
but
the
like
Eagles to cause an upset.
yeah, and yeah, and it's so disingenuous because, like as I said before, like yeah, the Giants can put on some even stats, but sometimes again, it's like areas of the ground that don't function. So like they average out all right. But I can definitely see if that midfield doesn't fire. We've seen West Coast really do well
Mm-hmm.
against pretty poor midfields. So that's another one. Again, their defense against turnovers, if West Coast can at least get some pressure, which again, you don't have to be the best team to force pressure. If they can get some forward half intercepts, they've got a chance because, it's not like they've got the biggest crabs ever shooting for goals. Like they're young, but if you give them an opportunity, they've shown to convert them a decent amount of times. So, yeah, like you're still tipping GWS, but like, yeah, I think there's a few games like this. You just wouldn't put it out the question for West Coast. I really don't think GWS have shown that much this year as well. So, yeah. This should be a lot closer than the last few, which have all been blowouts where like Hogan's kicked 20 goals. Yeah. But again, like, yeah, if they did bring the ball forward, yeah, GW was going to smash the defense.
You would assume so,
But that's been a
especially
problem.
without Edwards out there,
Yeah.
who normally makes
Yeah, exactly.
is fairly good.
Like, they're probably going to bring like a Red Bazo or like a Marich or a here's the other one, like, is it Gross?
Tom
I think
Gross?
Gross is the defender. I can't remember.
Yeah, it might be Tom
Yeah. Yeah, anyway, just someone who's probably not that great. So yeah, as I said, it is what it is. West Coast just have to deal with what they've got.
Yep.
Tom Cole can come back too. I think he was out.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
could be a Tom Cole return. There's definitely some options
Yeah.
for the Eagles.
Options, not great ones. So as I said, yeah, as I said, you would think there's enough for GWST, but man, I can also see solid opportunities for the West Coast Wing. I honestly don't. 65-35 might be generous to the Giants.
That's a little generous.
But I think that's about where it is.
See it. Yeah.
Yeah.
That pretty much brings us to the end of the episode. Thank you all so much for liking, commenting, subscribing, and coming to hang out with us this week. Are you up to much this week?
Not really. It's been a bit of a reset week for me. I've been meaning to go back to the gym, so it's a good opportunity to do that for me. Otherwise, just bits and pieces here and there. Not much otherwise.
Fair enough. For me, I don't have much going on during the week itself. It's more the weekend for me that is very busy, as I've got work on top of the move. And then obviously I'm going to the footy and that gig on the Sunday as well. And then I'm also doing my bi-weekly plasma donation on the Monday. So I'm going to be very flat out during the weekend. But it's going to be good. I'm looking forward to finally getting everything into the new place. Hopefully I'll have all of this set up by the time for us to record next week's podcast. So I'm very much looking forward to it. You'll see me with a brand new background. Which will be very interesting because it'll be the first time that I have been in a different background in the entire time we've been recording this. So there you go. But yes, thank you all so much for coming and hang out with us this week, and we will see you all next week for episode 106, I think. So until then, take care.
Yeah, I think so.